Good evening, Canby. Welcome to the October 23rd City Council meeting and work session. Starting here a little bit after 6, we have our work session this evening, and we're going to be discussing the FEMA model ordinance, the option implementation this evening. And so I'll turn it over to Eileen, and if you want to introduce or add to that, or just send it over to Mr. Hardy.
I'm going to send it right over to Mr. Hardy and let him introduce our guest.
Perfect.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. I just wanted to start out by introducing Ashley Dougal here from Barry Elsner Hammond, and she'll be doing most of the presentation tonight. I just wanted to say a few macro kind of overarching comments tonight to lead this off. So the FEMA model ordinance discussion is coming down as a requirement. And I won't go into the biological details of this, but it's from a biological issue related to salmonoids and the Endangered Species Act. And so with that all in mind, the Federal Emergency Management Agency is doing this universally across Oregon. And they're asking cities to do a selection of which alternative they would like to do as part of their updated floodplain ordinance provisions by December 1st, noting which of these three options that that cities want to proceed with. And that hopefully tonight will get your plurality of opinion on that to move forward with one of these that we're suggesting. And the three options are prohibit all new floodplain development, and that's number one. Access floodplain development on a case-by-case basis is number two, incorporating the Federal Endangered Species Act. And then number three is adopt the FEMA model ordinance, which requires permit applicants to follow the model ordinance. And that's the one, option three is the one we would prefer to proceed with, and Ashley will go into the details of that. She's way more fluent in this than I am. And she will talk about the issues about why that's the case, why that's the way it is, and address issues related to the risk and cost associated with these for a jurisdiction, and also just the pragmatic part of that. This part is the first part of the process, and then from that selection, and I don't want to go into too much detail on this, but from that selection, then there is an adoption of our new floodplain ordinance that is required for us to adopt based on our selection tonight by July 2025. And there are some elements that Ashley will identify tonight, addressing some tailoring that will be necessary for that model ordinance, if that is the direction the council chooses tonight, which would address clear and objective standards per Oregon requirements dealing with storm drainage, undeveloped space, impervious surface, and tree requirements. And so those would be elements that would have to be done by July 2025. I did talk to Jerry Nelzine this morning, and we have an on-call, engineering on-call that we've just selected engineers off of that on-call. Our hope is that one of those firms might be able to help us with that work versus going out for an RFP. So that's one item that's in play right now, and Jerry is contacting those firms to see if they have that experience. With that, I wanted to turn it over to Ashley to go through her presentation tonight.
Great. Hello, everyone. Thank you for welcoming me in person. It's great to see you all and meet you all. I think Dawn gave a great, basically, summary of my presentation. So hopefully this questions? Is still, I'm happy to answer questions and also go into a little bit more detail. But my name is Ashley Dougal. I'm an attorney at Barry Elsner and Hammond. We represent public entities across Oregon. I specialize primarily in land use and public contracting, though I do a little bit of everything public entity related. And today I'm presenting on the floodplain NFIP, which is the National Flood Insurance Program updates that FEMA is requiring, and the pre-implementation compliance measures, the various options that you have. Let's see if it's clicker. Should I point it this way?
I think it's upside down.
Oh, sorry. There we go. Thank you. All right. So first of all, this is mostly just for your reference to refer back to if you're looking back at this presentation and wanting to read it again or understand it. We all know that the federal government loves their acronyms, so FEMA's no exception. These are a number of useful acronyms to know when you're kind of navigating the world of FEMA and also the world of specifically the NFIP. So this is just, again, for your own reference if you're wanting to refer back to this presentation. So NFIP in Oregon, NFIP, like I said, is the National Flood Insurance Program, and it primarily maps flood hazards, offers insurance within flood hazard areas, and regulates development within those areas to reduce flood damages in high-risk areas. The flood maps identify exactly where FEMA thinks the highest risks are, and then the development regulations are meant to reduce risk to human life, but now, more recently, as we've understood with these ESA updates, also to reduce risk to other endangered species life as well. So in order to remain participating and covered by NFIP, Oregon cities and counties must implement these federal regulatory requirements into their local land use codes. And usually that's done through an overlay zone. I believe that's how Canby does it as well. The maps are updated periodically to tell you where the floodplain does and does not exist. That can be done just naturally as the floodplain changes, or maybe there's an error in how the map was recorded, or and that is called a LOMA, or it can be done upon request. If, for the most common example, is when a developer is actually filling a piece of the floodplain through their development, then they may need to obtain first an LOMAR based on fill, it's called. So those are the two key ways that the FEMA map is most often updated. So this is a little bit of a janky map, but I compiled it from FEMA's website of Canby specifically. And you can see in light yellow Canby's city limits, and then also in the northeast corner and also the southwest corner, you can see orange and blue for the 0.2 annual chance of flood hazard and the 1% or greater annual chance of flood hazard. So the blue and also the striped red are the ones to pay attention to, because those are the areas that would be regulated by FEMA through the NFIP. And so you can see the floodplain luckily primarily passes Canby by. So it's not as big of an issue for you all as it is for some other cities in Oregon along the coast or in other parts of the Willamette Valley, but it still isn't insignificant, right? There are still portions of your city and developable land that is within the flood hazard area. And you can look at this map yourself as well. It's also in my presentation. I pulled this map in, I believe, mid-September, so it should be current. So some background on the PICMs, which are the pre-implementation compliance measures, and why we're here, how it all happened. So back in 2007, FEMA was sued by a group of various entities, public and private, and they were alleging that FEMA's rules actually were violating federal law. And so they claimed that FEMA was out of compliance with the Endangered Species Act, the ESA, and that the way that it was implementing its rules and requiring Oregon to implement its rules actually endangered certain species, certain listed species. And so Oregon's district court agreed and required NMFS to issue a biological opinion on it, which it did in 2016. And it concluded that, in fact, the way that FEMA implements its rules in Oregon jeopardizes 18 ESA-listed species. So this process of updating or figuring out how to react to this violation was kind of put by the wayside for a little while between 2016 and 2024. However, in August of 2024, this kind of came back around. It came to light again when FEMA issued a PICM overview sheet, which it provided basically on its website and also to cities and counties around Oregon. And it also began offering informational sessions to Oregon communities. Also, in that sheet, and as of August 1st, 2024, FEMA indefinitely suspended LOMARS and CLOMAR-F processing. So essentially what that means, if you recall, LOMARS is one of the two ways to amend the FEMA map, and it's for specifically development. So essentially what they did is they indefinitely paused any sort of development based on fill within the floodplain or any subsequent amendments to FEMA's map based on the same as of August 1st. They will still, as a note to that, they will still issue LOMARS if a CLOMAR was previously approved, but that's a very unique and specific scenario where they will permit LOMARS to continue.
What's a CLOMAR again?
Oh, sorry, I didn't say that. That's a conditional letter of map provision. So essentially that's saying, you know, you will ultimately get a letter of map provision, but first you have to do X, Y, Z to comply.
Okay,
And then we'll issue it to you.
all right.
No, yeah, I hadn't clarified, so fair question. All right, so what are these pre-implementation compliance options that FEMA is requesting? As Don mentioned, we have three, and these are basically to bring cities and counties into compliance with the ESA as FEMA works out its own regulations and figures out its own regulations and tries to come into compliance with the ESA. So these are things that cities and counties can do prior to FEMA coming into its own compliance. So the first option is to just prohibit all new floodplain development. This was not something that we recommend that you take. I think it would open the city up to some litigation, and also Measure 37 and 49 claims, which are basically takings of residential property. It is a pretty extreme option. Not as extreme for you all since you don't have quite so much land within the floodplain, but still, you do have some. Your second option would be to assess floodplain development requests on a case-by-case basis by incorporating the actual ESA, the Endangered Species Act, into floodplain ordinances. So this could work for you all, but it would be much more administratively burdensome and time-consuming to implement. First, you would have to create your own ordinance to this effect, and then second, you would have to administer it, most likely by hiring or contracting with an expert in ESA-related or environmental-related matters to assess each permit as it came in and then make an independent assessment of that process. So it might work for some cities or it might be useful for some cities, but for smaller communities, it could be costly or time-consuming. Yeah.
So just, again, so with number two, I think you just stated it, which I think kind of answers my question, but I just want to make sure.
Yeah.
Is no matter what we write, so option number two, no matter what we write ordinance-wise, it still would have to go through a tremendous amount of review, case by case, even with an ordinance already in place, because there's just, it seems to me that there'd still be too much ambiguity in what could or could not be done with option two.
There would be a lot of ambiguity.
Okay.
You would be relying on theoretically some independent third-party expert to make those decisions, most likely. I mean, unless you hired someone on staff to help you with that assessment. But you bring up a great point. For any of these three, it'll require a code amendment because you will need to either choose to, in your code, prohibit floodplain development, assess on a case-by-case basis, or adopt the model ordinance. So any path you go, it'll require a code amendment. It's just how much work and how much drafting will it take to get there.
So
What about option 4, which is
Thank you.
don't do anything?
I do get to that later.
Okay.
But what FEMA has told us is that if you choose nothing, they will expect you to do option 2. So
And if we don't? I mean, I'm just trying
Well,
to,
I
every
do-
law has a consequence
Yep.
for not following it. I'm just wondering-
I have a slide on consequences, but I
Okay.
can tell you from FEMA specifically, there's not much that they would be able to do, because if you recall, they've told us they are not amending their regulations yet. They're not amending their regulations until 2027. But they could audit you and mark you down for when they do amend their regulations to come back and take a look at things in 2 years or a year and a half. That also wouldn't stop a third-party lawsuit, very similar to the lawsuit that was brought against FEMA for being out of compliance with the ESA, right? A exact same lawsuit that came against FEMA could also come against you, and we saw it win against FEMA, so there's also no reason it wouldn't win against a city. So if you are working towards a PICM, I think you can make a good faith argument that, maybe at this very literal second in time, we're out of compliance, but we're doing everything we can to come into compliance. But if you chose not to do anything and you chose not to also try to do anything, then they would have a stronger case.
Okay, so because every law has a stick attached to it, and the stick in this case, if we don't do option 1, 2, or 3, is somebody could sue the city later, if I'm understanding correctly?
Correct, yeah. Someone could sue the city if under basically the same claim, right, that you were violating the Endangered Species Act.
So the city would be violating because they didn't adopt the FEMA model ordinance, and the FEMA model ordinance is, okay.
Does that, yeah.
Okay.
Does that answer your question? Or?
It's kind of, yeah,
Because currently FEMA's rules are out of compliance with the federal laws.
The ESA,
Yeah.
that's the allegation.
And so you guys are doing a good job of following FEMA's current rules,
Mm-hmm.
but those are out of compliance with the ESA. So now FEMA's told us those are out of compliance with the ESA, and here is how you can come into compliance while we figure our own rules out.
Okay.
And these are the 3 options they've identified as
Yeah.
working to do that.
I don't want to skip ahead too much, but
Yeah.
I went to a presentation on this last week on
Yeah.
this. And the attorneys there seem to think there's a good case that the new FEMA rules are not statutorily supported by the current FEMA laws. I mean, that was one of the arguments some of the attorneys were making.
Their current rules, like.
I mean, the ones that they're proposing, because
Mm-hmm.
basically FEMA is not given any authority to by the federal law to enforce the Endangered Species Act.
That's true.
And so
Yeah.
you might be in a situation that, I guess what the term is, ultra vires, or the regulations go against the law. And there was some talk, and I'm just
No, it's a great
making
point.
it more interesting tonight, but
No,
the
it's
talk is
yeah.
that there could be a case developed that says that FEMA is out of line here. And I think especially with the Loper case that just happened, this summer, that could be much more easier than it would have been prior to that with the old Chevron
Yeah.
analysis. And I've in other aspects of life successfully challenged regulations before, and I know it's something that can be done, but I'm just curious about, I don't know, I'm just
No,
curious.
yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I think it's a risk analysis, right? So I think the risk of
Eileen's
not
probably-
doing anything is probably higher than the risk, and not doing anything and waiting to see if someone sues FEMA over this is higher than the risk of trying to follow what FEMA is telling us. And also, I mean, it is quite possible, I mean, it is true that FEMA does not have the authority to tell us that we must comply with the ESA. But the NMFS, I always trip over that acronym, has told us that FEMA's rules are out of compliance, and they do have authority to say that. They haven't told cities and counties to do anything, but they have told us how we are out of compliance, and then by implication, how we can be in compliance. And the most clear way to do that would be number 2, but it would also be the most complicated. Obviously, if we, and this I'll also get into, but for the model ordinance, we would have to do our own independent assessment to make sure all parts of it do comply with the ESA and with state law, like land use laws. I have my own concerns about that, which I've talked to Don about, and that I will talk through with you all as well. I'm not by any means saying the third option's perfect, but I think it's the best we've got, basically.
Jason, go ahead.
So,
Sorry, Counselor
just
Pat.
going back to the presentation.
Yeah.
I heard you just hitting 1 and 2, but did we talk about 3?
We haven't yet, no.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I didn't miss something.
No,
Sorry
no.
for the derail. We can go.
No,
all
no,
right.
it's fine. I was like, did I miss something? I'm sitting right here, so.
No, that's all right. So I can move to number 3 if we feel like that's good. Oh, yeah,
One
go
quick
ahead.
question, before we get too deep in it. What's the difference between floodplain and wetlands?
That's a great question. There's a lot of overlap, but
Okay.
they are distinct. So the point of floodplain traditionally has been to mitigate risk to human life
Okay.
and property, right? It is the areas with a 1% chance or greater of annual flood. And so it's the areas that we see as the highest risk to human life.
Okay.
But now what we're hearing, and practically, there's a lot of overlap with wetlands, right? Because those areas that flood also probably are pretty wet.
Yep.
But now what we're hearing is we can't just look at it in, a vacuum, each of those things. We have to look at them together, and because, when we look at wetlands, we think about endangered species. When we look at FEMA, we think of human life, but we need to start thinking about both.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Real quick. Thank you, Daniel, for sharing some of your thoughts. He did go to the FEMA thing at OLC. I went to a different breakout session, so I'm glad he's here with
I went to the
us.
class on this subject. so
Yeah,
I'm
we were
prepared.
just at
Yeah,
the
yeah,
Morgan
no,
Cities,
it's
and
great.
they had a class on this.
Yeah.
But I'm going to be honest, I'm coming into this meeting already thinking that number 2 should be the option. So
Okay.
to eliminate some questions from me later, just really
Sure.
sell me on number 3, because
Okay.
I need to hear why, because I'm all about number 2 right now.
Well, I want to hear why you think it's such a good option.
Because more case by case, I feel like that's more local control
Okay.
rather than regional and other agencies telling us what to do. So-
That's fair. I guess I would counter that to say FEMA always has told us what to do in this area.
And I'm
we've
not a
always
fan of
followed
FEMA,
it.
so
I mean,
just saying.
I get it.
Sell me on number 3.
I
Well, the
get it.
question, though, is
so
how
the
much
other-
land are we talking about?
Not a lot here, to be
Yeah.
honest, so that's another point, yeah.
So the other concern, I guess, with number 2 is to consider, I think there's some public land, I believe.
There is, and that actually is in the northwest quadrant, the area where sports complex, dog park, et cetera, by Eco. And we have another map actually as well, but yes, there is. And there's also floodplain on the downhill side of the police station and back of that as well. Cub has some facilities back in that area as well. And the one thing I was just going to have Ashley address is which I think she'll address anyway, but the chance of third-party lawsuit between 2 and 3, which could be tribes, it could be individual conservancy groups, et cetera. And I think that's an important distinction between 2 and 3.
Yeah, so, great points. What the point I was going to make with the public land is the model ordinance is already drafted in a way that it accepts certain situations, certain types of development from the ordinance standards, including development of certain types of like city development, right? So laying your utilities, for example. Under the model ordinance, development is defined so broadly that any time basically soil is turned, that is development. So whether you are trying to, reconstruct a road or upgrade a road or relay some utilities or, build a path in your park, build up sidewalk in your park, that would all be considered development, and you would have to abide by either this case by case yourself or the no net loss. So that is something to keep in mind.
Okay.
Also, my biggest concern through all of this has been how does this FEMA stuff fit in with our land use regulations? And we've been told by the state that when we regulate residential development, the regulations must be clear and objective. And if we are deciding something on a case-by-case basis, that is already not clear because we're telling you we'll just decide when it comes to us. And it is also really difficult to be objective because we're saying it's an independent third party who's deciding this, who might have their own, ideas about the development, right? So I guess I I see what you're saying about, not wanting to defer to FEMA, and I think I would agree with that, because the model ordinance does have its issues, and on the next slide, I do go through that. So if I would suggest the model ordinance, it would be the model ordinance as substantially amended.
I was just going to say, it is a model, which when I hear model ordinance, I think template. So can there be local tweaks to it?
There's not been clarity from FEMA on that. We are assuming we can.
Okay.
Because otherwise it would not work for compliance with state law.
Okay.
At
And it
minimum.
just happened August 1st, so that's,
Yeah.
Yeah,
usually that means there's no clarity at all.
yeah. And to the point about third-party lawsuits, the failing to be clear and objective, the other land use issues that I'll talk about, all of those open you up to a whole other side of lawsuits related to development that we haven't even talked about, not related to ESA, not related to any of that, right? Just, developers can, care strongly about. Oh, no worries.
Technology is talking at the moment.
FEMA's listening in on this.
Yeah,
Listening.
quite. Sure,
I was just going to add one more thing to the discussion as well. I think number 2 would be really challenging from a fee basis piece of this as well, because we, again, not only the clear and objective standards, but we would have to pass on the cost. We'd have to have a biologist on call on the city's part, because we don't have a biologist at the city to do our part of that review or hire that out. And so that part would be pretty clunky as well from, if you're looking at property rights issues, it would appear that 2 is stronger property rights. But from a delay perspective, my personal opinion is that property rights would go by the wayside when the person says that's going to take another 4 or 5 months of time to go back and forth on things based on kind of undefined standards. Additionally, I don't think, we have another map that Ashley has one. We actually put another one together. There's not that much property in the city that's really subject to this.
Right.
That has not already either been developed, or is probably undevelopable or less developable. So you have some property down off of Ivy. There's some vacant land that is in the bottom, the toe of at the Molalla River. There is some floodplain area, but that's down on the toe, not up on the upper bank area. And then there's some area by Eco Park that I mentioned as well, and then some behind the police station down on that other side. So there's not a lot of developable land as well, and I think that makes also the case by case. I could just see this being really complicated for a developer as well, and you might not have consistency, which I think the FEMA model does provide at least some consistency with the ads that Ashley's talking about, so that we have that clarity about no, this is the standard. The other part is, it's a bit unclear, and Ashley's going to help us with this as well, is our role as a city versus FEMA's role on permitting these. And it feels a bit like FEMA's putting it all on us, but I know there's a bit of back and forth on this, but it's starting, that's the shift as well, as we have this model ordinance. We didn't regulate this before. I know there's still an aspect that FEMA's going to be involved in, but the burden is coming back largely on the city. And so let's take it through the Planning Commission, for example, as a situation, and not having to fight through the case by case, which can be, again, that the tendency is, if you're Planning Commission, it's more discretionary, even though they may not they're supposed to not be going down that path. That's the tendency, and that may make that more complicated for developers as well.
Right. And part of my reasoning for number 2 is I was looking in the map and seeing that much of the land in question is owned by the city.
And-
So I thought, well, then case by case discretionary on the city made sense to me.
And that's
So-
actually a double-edged sword, though, because the case by case, that would require probably some sort of independent biological assessment, which could slow down the project, and development will be so broadly defined. An unimproved trail would be a development. If you have a park down in that corner and you were trying to just build a little, cedar chip path through the park.
Okay.
If you were needing to dig into the ground, that could be a development. you know? And then, again, I'm going to the most extreme, right? But then that project is delayed months because you're having to, you know, find an outside independent expert because you don't want to have one on staff, and then work with them to determine ESA compliance, and then you don't have a process set in your code, so you're trying to figure it out as you go, and, you know.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fair. Thank you.
Okay. So I'll just, oh yeah, go ahead.
Just really quickly,
Yeah.
because we've gone round and round on this, I just want to make sure that I get the gist of it. Essentially, one is an option, non-option. It's an option, but we shouldn't consider it.
Well, you could still consider it, but it's very high risk.
Fantastic. Option two is we have more control over the situation, but it means we have to have more staff, and it could be higher fraught with lawsuits.
More time consuming, more costly, potential for lawsuit, at least when it comes to residential development, but I don't know how much that impacts you all.
Okay, and then option three is
I haven't
less
got there yet.
control. Oh, okay, I thought okay.
Yeah.
We're not
No
on number three
problem.
yet.
I would like to get to number three.
Yeah, no, you can go ahead and.
Well, the
let me
read
know what
I'm
you
getting
think.
is that option three is less local control, but more guardrails, less, we wouldn't necessarily need staff, and it would ultimately, when we come up into these situations, it would save time.
It would definitely save time. I guess, just to reframe it a little bit, all of these are coming down from the feds, right? So
Yeah.
they're all about federal control
Sure.
or oversight. It's just how we decide to implement that, right? Option two is still compliance with the ESA, which is a federal act.
But three is less lawsuit, less chance of lawsuits?
Hopefully.
That's what I,
Hopefully.
okay.
No guarantees either way.
No.
Yeah. Okay.
Unfortunately. So
Okay.
yeah, the pros of option three is just to adopt the FEMA model ordinance, which they sent out to us, I think, in September. And that basically permits applicants to develop within this special flood hazard area, which is the area, I believe, with 1% chance or greater of flood, as long as they can demonstrate that the development will achieve no net loss. And that's the key, is what is no net loss? I'll get into that a little bit more, but the pros of this option is FEMA's already issued it to us, so at least we have that, a little bit of a backing of, you know, this is something that the feds have told us is good, and therefore, you know, we are trusting the feds in our implementation of this, which has generally been a common approach across Oregon when it's come to floodplain regulation in the past, is FEMA has always issued these model ordinances, and many cities have chosen to completely adopt or adopt parts of it over time. Another pro is that, you know, they've already done some of the work for us. So we have a first draft. First drafts are always the hardest administratively. And we can go with what they already have and then ideally tailor it to the city's needs. Another a concern I have is the clear and objective piece when it comes to residential development, but that's a lot easier to write in than if we were just doing a complete case-by-case assessment. So it still has some work to do. And as I'll say on a next slide, we have until July to do that work. Maybe longer, but at least July. So I think we would have enough time, definitely with option three, to do that.
Okay.
Great. All right, I'm going to move on to the next slide, which is just a little bit more detail on that model ordinance. So it requires any landowner that is developing, and again, develop is defined very broadly, like I was mentioning. It's basically any time soil's being turned, then that is considered development. So even repairs, right, if that's including soil being turned, so like going in and fixing utilities, that's going to be development, or fixing a road. If you're doing that within the special flood hazard area, then you have to demonstrate that the development will achieve no net loss to three categories: undeveloped space, impervious surfaces, and trees that are 6 inches DBH, or that's just how they measure trees, I guess arborists, but that's at diameter at breast height or greater. So those are the three categories. And With trees, it seems pretty clear to me in the ordinance. It's basically a one-to-one. If you're cutting down one tree, you need to plant another tree. That's also very common in tree codes. The undeveloped space and impervious surfaces, those still need a little sorting out, especially in the context of making it clear and objective, right? How do you do a one-to-one when it comes to an undeveloped space? What does that really mean? And what does it mean for impervious surfaces? If you're filling in an impervious surface here, does that mean you create one over here and that's sufficient? You know, those are the kind of questions that we'll need to explore as we're developing, if we were to go with this option, as we'd be developing the ordinance, or to think through if we went by the case-by-case option. So some of the considerations, like I said, the broad development definition. Also, there's this riparian buffer zone, which kind of plays into the wetlands as well. It's, I believe, 170 feet on either side of any riparian corridor. So, and there's regulations around that, understanding how that plays into the special flood hazard area. Also, I know many cities, and I believe you do as well, have outside stormwater management. So being sure that you align on that and the way that you're approaching your ordinance or your development within this area to follow what they're doing, and that you're figuring that out early, I think is really important, so that you don't accidentally do something to contradict them or otherwise in your code regarding stormwater. Also building out the exceptions, like I was mentioning, ensuring that utilities can be serviced quickly without having to go through this process. This permitting process is really important. There's many other exceptions as well listed, but that's the one that jumps out to me from a public perspective. And then I already mentioned the clear and objective requirements in residential zones, involving subject matter experts in the process to understand those kind of three categories a little bit more. And then just recognizing that whatever amendment we do to the development code does take time. Land use code amendments are kind of a time-consuming process, so getting the conversation started early will make sure, and all these considerations early will make sure that we can meet those timelines that FEMA is giving us. So, talking about timelines, December 1st is the first one. This is when FEMA has told us that they would like us to tell them which of the three options we're choosing. They've told us that all we need to do is email that email address and let them know which of the three options we are going with. And like I mentioned, if we choose no option, they will expect us to enforce a case-by-case basis. They have not yet amended their own regulations, so it is unclear how they would enforce that, other than just by auditing to see for compliance. But as far as teeth, I don't know if that would come into effect until 2027. We are recommending to choose your path by December 1st, but until you have actually amended your code, continue to enforce your existing code, because otherwise you will be out of compliance with state law and at risk of many other developer lawsuits. Do you have a question, Mayor?
I do, and
Okay.
I'm going to try to ask you in as least of a snarky fashion as possible.
Okay.
It seems to me that this is a little bit of the cart before the horse.
Pre-implementation compliance measures, yes, it's
Because
pre.
I understand.
Yeah,
you
definitely.
explaining that because
Pre.
Yeah.
do we run, so I guess that leads to my question of what risks are we running into by putting a ordinance into place and then FEMA to go through and write this, but then what aspects may or may not fit?
Yeah, it's
Like
a,
how much,
yeah,
I personally hate redundancy and redoing work.
yep,
And I'm especially sensitive to having staff go through and redo work. And so this whole conversation, you've done a great job breaking this down and explaining it to us. But as I read it, I have real concern that we're going to run into this
yeah.
kind of Groundhog Day piece of having to revisit this a couple of times.
I mean, it's a real concern. It is a real concern. It's a real issue, right? And I mean, this wasn't an issue for 8 years, and then FEMA, the lawsuit was in 2007, right? This is 2024. It's only coming up now, and they issued their the ordinance draft within 1 month, right? That's how long I think they were working on it. So clearly, there's things that they probably haven't considered yet, which is why they're waiting to write their rules for 2 more years. So I think it's safe to assume there will be things that they haven't thought about yet, right? But their primary goal is to write their rules to comply with the ESA. So if we're doing our own independent assessment of the ESA and this model ordinance and its compliance with the ESA, ideally, we can mitigate that risk as much as possible, while also working within the confines of the model ordinance. I can't promise that we'll, foresee every possibility that FEMA would think about. And, they issue amendments to their model ordinance pretty periodically anyway, and recommend that cities update accordingly. So I guess all that to say, we'll do what we can, but it is a real concern and possibility.
Thanks. Councilor Patton.
So couple questions, if we choose one of these options and tell FEMA this is the option that we're choosing, is there anything precluding us, once we get more information, to send a new email to this email address and say, you know what, we've actually changed our mind, we would like to do one of the other options?
That's a great question. They have not told us that, but our assumption has been you can. And that the safest route using logic would be to go with the model ordinance if you wanted to switch to a different one, because that seems like the one that is what FEMA is basically recommending.
They're steering us toward that one?
Yes.
Okay.
And so if you were to go a different route, it would be easier to switch from the model ordinance to the others than vice versa at a later date.
So then my follow-up question is, if we say we're going to do 3, and it sounds like we need to at least be showing some action, some movement.
Yeah.
If we were to really slow walk this and say, okay, let's adopt some of the higher level things, so at least some action is being taken, but we're going to wait till the granular stuff becomes more clear, is that okay?
Well, define okay, because they have
Will they
given-
come and sue us?
They can't sue us, but
Or
a third party
whatever.
could,
Okay,
right? Because until we do something, we are out of compliance with the ESA.
okay.
So if we're dragging our feet, they'll have a stronger claim to say, well, you're dragging your feet, you really don't want to comply with the ESA, and we're going to bring a lawsuit against you.
Okay.
Also, FEMA has given us a timeline for implementing any of the 3 options, and that is July 2025. So that gives us 6 to 7 months to do the process, ideally. But again, there's no rules from FEMA requiring that, so all they would do if we don't meet that exact deadline is audit.
Yeah.
We still want to meet that deadline, just, not to be, you don't want to be audited by FEMA, and you don't want to get on their bad side or their radar, right?
I agree.
Or invite any other sort of lawsuits from that action. So I think aiming for July is a good goal.
Okay.
But also, I get the impression that if, despite your good faith efforts, it went into August, maybe it wouldn't be absolutely the end of the world if we kept communication with FEMA.
Okay,
Okay.
that makes it up for me.
Counselor Stearns?
Okay, so for my small little brain in here, just to figure out the sequence of how this all matters.
Yeah.
So let's say scenario, I went and bought a nice piece of land, and I went down and found it was color of yellow. And then at that point, if I were to, so this is a flood insurance program. So but I can buy flood insurance as long as I comply with the FEMA regulations, or is it something like I put my shovel in the ground and all of a sudden I get swarmed by a bunch of FEMA agents, or what exactly? I mean, what I'm saying is, what I'm trying to get out is, at what point does FEMA matter in the whole scheme of things if I want to build a house and what happens? I'm just using that as an example. So I want to build a house, or say I just want to build a driveway or have a house already, it's already in the yellow spot, and I want to maybe, I don't know, re-landscape it or something. At what point does FEMA come in and say, nah, I can't do that? And then when they say, nah, I can't do that, what happens to me?
Yeah.
Or as opposed to what happens to the city? Or I'm just trying to figure out exactly how much this matters.
Consequences.
Yeah,
Consequences.
yeah. Well, so this matters less, I'm thinking about this less from the perspective of the developer because cities and counties are my clients. So I'm thinking about it from the perspective of cities and counties. And for cities and counties, if they fail to fully comply by enforcing the ESA and the NFIP, then they can lose their flood insurance.
Okay, and so when they said the county loses, or city, let's say, okay, we just didn't do anything, and they say you lost your flood insurance, what does that mean? It means
Risk.
that we as a city don't have flood insurance? Does it mean our residents don't have flood insurance? What does that mean?
It means-
I'm just asking the question because I don't know.
Yeah, I believe it just means that you don't have flood insurance.
So us
You
as a
could be
city.
at risk. You at risk.
City, so then if the river overflowed and it wiped out the water treatment plant, then we wouldn't get a payout from the.
Well, I don't think it would be that extreme that quickly, but they would probably, I have to say, I haven't looked at the exact enforcement processes and steps for FEMA, but I would assume that they would have some audits and they would have some compliance letters and they would attempt to work with you to get you into compliance. And then if you still continue to violate and you still continue to be.
We pay a flood insurance premium, I assume, as part of our insurance cost, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then that would go up maybe? I'm just.
Well, it would maybe for a first offense, I can look into the exact enforcement mechanisms if that would be helpful.
So I'm just curious. I'm not trying
Yeah.
to make an argument or fight. I'm
No,
just
no, no.
curious. Every time somebody says this is the law, I ask, well, what does non-compliance with the law mean? And
Yeah,
Seems
sometimes
like we're on the next slide already.
are we on the next slide? All
No,
right.
I think you took us there.
There you go.
Okay, cool. Well, that's good.
Compliance.
So,
Yeah, so what I was just describing, and I'm happy to look that up if that would be helpful. I just don't know the literal steps. I know that most cities, if they are out of compliance, in my experience, the FEMA will notify them. FEMA will work with the city to come into compliance, and then everything will be good.
and if they don't, it's a fine or something. Is it a fine?
Yeah, I believe so. I haven't
Okay,
had a city fight that before.
I don't know.
There's always
Just background on me, I fight the government all the time, and it's just my job.
Yeah.
But so that doesn't bother me in and of itself, but
Yeah.
the question is what, and then just for the council to know, I don't really like this, but I don't think that our city is the one to challenge it because there's so little amount in the floodplains. I think if somebody wants to challenge FEMA on it, would probably, another city would make a better case than we would. So that's just my feeling on fighting it in this case, but I still am curious to know.
Yeah, well, I definitely can, I'm sure it would be an easy search to figure out what the actual
Yeah, find a
compliance
city that
team
was
they
the
have.
most belligerent, most stubborn, and see what happened to them. We can use it as an example.
Well, in the situation we're currently in,
Mm-hmm.
FEMA can't do anything, right? That's kind of the point that I've been trying to drive home with this is FEMA's current rules are out of compliance. They have told us they will not amend their rules until 2027. Therefore, they won't have any enforcement mechanisms to enforce these new compliance measures until 2027.
Okay.
But there's still a risk of a third-party lawsuit.
So third party, somebody non-FEMA that just comes in.
Exactly.
But even if we do follow FEMA rules, since this is ESA and not FEMA, they could still sue us anyway, right?
For not complying with FEMA?
Or for not complying with ESA.
If we did, which one, sorry?
Or whatever we do, somebody could say, you're not compliance with the ESA, right?
True, but it would be a lot harder of an argument to make if
We
what
could say,
we've
well, we're
done.
following what everybody told us to do. Yeah.
And we had done our own independent assessment of the ESA,
Yeah.
and we were working with outside experts to, ensure protected species were considered and, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay.
I just add one more thing. some of the biological part of this, I think if we're looking at the model ordinance, is there are sister agencies obviously involved. National Marine Fisheries Services are involved with this as well. So this model ordinance, I believe, is premised on, there's different, when you go through a biological case-by-case study, you go into, do you have an effect? Are you likely to adversely affect? Do you have an effect? Those are the evaluations, and basis of those are mitigation measures come out based on those. And so my belief is the model ordinance also is premised on the fact of not likely to adversely affect as an opinion, which would be what federal agencies would look at if none of this were in play and you were, dealing with this in like another state, for example. That would be like in Washington. That's exactly how it's looked at. So I think the model ordinance also it's premised on and not likely to adversely affect. So it gives us some protection in the sense that other agencies have looked at this. And so that's a yardstick that is underpinning, I believe, the model ordinance, whereas the case by case does not have that.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. Thank you for saying that. Yeah, no, and I kind of briefly mentioned that, but it's good to clarify that, this is all based off of that biological opinion that NMFS released. And yes, they were basically telling FEMA to do certain things, and they were saying that if you do these things, it will be more likely to protect these endangered species. So we are not only following, if we were to choose that, we're not only following FEMA's direction, but we're also following the second federal agency's direction who does have authority over this area.
Okay. Councilor Patton?
So regarding this topic, I would advocate for option 3, I'm curious as to if a particular scenario how this might apply to a particular scenario that has come to my attention. Apparently in one of our neighborhoods that backs up against wetland, someone took it upon themselves to destroy said wetland. And now that wetland needs to be mitigated, and it sounds like the city might not have too much teeth to then penalize them for doing this on their own. Would this sort of thing give the city more teeth to go after someone who does something like that, or is that a completely different thing?
Well, I don't know if I want to, I might want to avoid like too specific, just because if I was going to give you specific advice, I would kind of want it to be privileged.
Sure. But I mean, in general, if someone was to do such a thing.
Very
Let's pretend somebody wanted to.
Very generally, wetlands overlay zones are usually handled differently from
this
floodplain overlay zones.
Okay.
But they do have a lot of practical overlap, but often, they are handled as different overlay zones. Do you know if do you all have a?
Yeah, we have a riparian, we have wetland protection based on our riparian zone, which is off of like the Malala River. It's 100 feet of buffer. But to your question, the Department of State Lands does have significant authority over wetlands because of the Clean Water Act.
Okay.
And so that would be a call that could be made if there was a concern on a wetland. And just a little differentiation, wetlands have soils, plants, and water.
Mm-hmm.
So whereas floodplain, you're not going to really have much soil.
Sure.
So just on a pragmatic definitional perspective, but Department of State Lands is the branch, the code enforcement branch. They are the Army Corps of Engineers essentially in Oregon. They've been uniquely empowered in Oregon to do that.
Okay.
I've not seen that in other states, but they would be, if there's a wetland fill, that's a pretty serious issue because it's a Clean Water Act issue.
Yep. And the Department of State Lands and FEMA collaborate on a lot of floodplain and wetland stuff together. So, they function similarly in Oregon. But Department of State Lands also, if we have a overlay zone, we could look at that code specifically and let you know how it functions in this context.
Okay, that answers my question. Thank you.
Okay.
Councilor Stassi?
Thank you, Councilor Patton, for bringing that up, because I always wondered what would happen if something like that happened.
Yeah.
And so I've been biting my tongue all night, and I thought, I know it's not your purview, but I would love to know if that happened, where we would go. So thank you.
Sounds like we know.
Thank you.
I guess my question is for you, Don, when we look at this, do we have a strategy and timeline to, at least for the code updates here by July? And is this going to be a consultant piece? And do we know yet costs of getting this done?
We don't have all those items. Let me give you what I do know. I think we can accomplish getting this completed by July 25. The hope, again, is I think using the engineering on-call, hopefully one of those firms that we just went through this to do an on-call to be, completely consistent with all of the procurement for these services. And Jerry is connecting with some of those engineering firms to see if they can actually do that. That would expedite this process significantly, so we don't have to do an RFP, et cetera. I don't think it's an exorbitant cost. I mean, I don't even know what to throw a number out, but we're not talking hundreds of thousands of dollars for sure. I think it's something in the order, I would just complete guesstimate, $50,000 would be my guesstimate of what this might cost to tool this, to, tool what we have. And there, Ashley did mention, and there are some overlapping issues in it. The storm drainage issue is a bit complex, and I don't want to go into a lot of detail on that, but we have a relationship with Clackamas County that relates to storm drainage review for buildings, and there's that element. We also are looking at some storm drainage as a city, but there's not one storm drainage agency that does it all, which makes our jobs rather complex in that process. Fortunately, most of the land around Canby is farmland, and it drains really well, and so there's really not concerns about problems with drainage, generally speaking. Pretty fortunate in Canby, actually, compared to the rest of the metro area, because that's not the case elsewhere. So I think that the timeline of this, I think, could be accomplished. It is something I would like to immediately report. I would like to report back once I hear back from Jerry on the on-call and whether we could tap that, and then working with Ashley and making sure that we're addressing these items to be clear and objective. We need some legal assistance here as well, because this is somewhat uncharted waters, so to speak, on this.
Okay.
And also, just to add to that, we are writing very similar, so we're working on model ordinances. Many of our cities are choosing the model ordinance path. And so, whatever work and whatever issues arise as we work with our other clients, we'll also be able to learn and grow and apply to your ordinance if we were to go that path. So, we have many clients who are considering this, and we'll have a strong ordinance draft by the end of it that ideally won't be completely spent in your time directly, right? It'll be an accumulation of cities working on this.
Perfect. Ashley, thank you. Really appreciate the time and explaining this, Don. I'm sure we'll hear more. Just, again, I think, so Don knows and Ashley know the direction. Is the model ordinance, is option 3 the option that we're going to roll forward
I
with?
think it would be best, and then we, as she said, we could probably
Rescind it later. Just
rescind it if we
Change it.
find something that may work a little better.
Yeah.
Does that give you what you need, Don?
Yes, and this could change, and, this is a good conversation, but just to be compliant in these steps, I think that would be a relief to have that at least, we're not really doing anything with it. Like Ashley said, we're still using the 2008 floodplain ordinance until such time as this is readopted, but it does at least give us that checkbox that if somebody asks that question, to say, what are you guys planning to do? We can say, this is what we're planning to do. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you both. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
We'll call this work session adjourned, and we're going to take a quick break. So I'm not going to put a time limit on it. Just everybody get back as quickly as you can. Ready, set, go. Work session.
Good evening. Welcome to the October 23rd, 2024 City Council regular meeting. If you would please stand for the invocation and then the Pledge of Allegiance. Dear Heavenly Father, I thank you so much for this wonderful community, and I thank you for the leaders that are gathered here. And this is a tremendous amount of time of change, not only in Canby, but our state and our country. I ask that you continue to bless us as a community, that your will be done, and whatever that is, that we as a community work together to move our city, our state, and our country in a positive direction. I ask this in your name. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here this evening. We've got a pretty good agenda. We just finished a work session this evening, reviewing some changes that are occurring at FEMA and how that will impact Canby and building codes and development codes. So as you were waiting outside, that's what we were working on at 6 tonight. Next on our agenda, Eileen, do we have any new employee introductions?
We do not.
We do not. Thank you. Next on our agenda is the Canby Prevention Coalition presentation update. And I will turn that over to Jackie Jones and friends.
Friends, his name is Trevor.
That's fine. They're friends, right?
Yeah.
There's Jim. Good evening. How are you guys? Good.
Excellent.
Good. It's good to see you again.
That should be up there soon. So thank you, Mayor Hodson, for having us in the city council, for having us come up here and update you. From I think last May is when we saw you, and we're excited for applying for the grant and letting you know what we've been doing. And I am Jackie Jones, as some of you know, don't know, with the Canby Prevention Coalition. I'm just a citizen of Canby who also lost their son, Jim, 18 years old, to the accidental prescription drug poisoning in 2011. So I've been doing a lot of advocacy work. I should talk into this. So that's why I've been very dedicated to making sure that working with the county, making sure that they know that we are here, that we definitely need some resources here. So that is, so I'm here today with Trevor Higgins. He's from Clackamas County. He's a senior program planner with Children, Family, and Community Connections with Clackamas County. And there you go. And then I will start us off with the Canby Prevention Coalition. I'm sorry. I know, I think I'd get used to public speaking at some point.
We never do.
And nobody can ever hear me. Okay, so here's our Canby Prevention Coalition PowerPoint presentation for you. And this is a logo that we all decided on to kind of represent Canby. We kind of had like the dahlia was in our minds when we kind of designed this. Wanted to make sure when people saw it, they thought of Canby, thought of the dahlia. And then also, and I also wanted to make sure it kind of had this Canby Prevention Coalition is for Canby. So we wanted to make sure that you guys didn't have some stock slides, stock pictures that, you know, we are in the community doing stuff. So the next is our, oh, that looked like it. Oh, there we go. So then just our talking points. So basically about us, our mission for the Canby Prevention Coalition is to work with the community. We've been looking to do education, which we've done some of that, some advocacy work. We've been out there trying to promote substance-free environments, trying to share resources, trying to be out there and be visible. And also the vision is that we're going to raise public awareness, which we've been doing some, but we hope to do some more about the dangers of substance use within our youth population. We want to make sure that we kind of educate, that we want to make sure that the youth do not think that using drugs, alcohol, marijuana is kind of a normal thing to do, that most of the peers are not doing it. So it's kind of sharing that education. And then basically, when we first started with the Canby Provision Coalition with our stakeholder meetings in the community was actually in 2021. So we've been doing this about 3 years. And then we kind of had a meeting, I think it was at the backstop on the second floor. We had a community meeting. We talked about, kind of discussed what we thought we needed in the community, asked the community members what they thought the concerns were in the community, what was going well, what was not going well, what we needed. And then we kind of went from there. We're working with the county, trying to make a plan on what do we need, what does Canby, because Canby is incredibly unique. So what does Canby specifically need? We wanted to make sure that it was like, it wasn't like Portland, it wasn't like Canby is, we have our own cultural needs. We're kind of not near any other cities. We have particular challenges, and we also have things that go well. So that was that. And then I'll leave it to Trevor.
Absolutely. No, and thank you so much. And really appreciate Jackie and just her time and dedication that she's had. Just in the time that I've known Jackie, which has been about 3 years, I've been very inspired and very motivated to being here in Canby as often as I can. There's been times where I've had to be pulled away due to some other business, but I always tend to come back to Canby. And what's really great is some of the updates that I have for all of you today. But as Jackie was talking about, we do have a very succinct process. We have come here with the intention of creating a community-driven response. And I say that because, as Jackie has mentioned, Canby is special. And in order for this work to succeed, we need all of you, everybody here in the room, to be supporting the work that we're doing, because there are several issues or several areas where we want to build strength, and we always want to be continuing to build that strength here in Canby. And so what you see before you now are actually some responses. We did a community readiness assessment, or basically we're gauging whether or not the community really wanted to tackle this type of work. And what we found, as you see before you, is that there were many different areas that people felt like there was some concern, some need for work. But mostly I want to just really, again, reiterate that local need for a community-driven response to make sure that our work was both a conceptual and a cultural fit for Canby. Let me go to the next slide. Thank you. So our approach was clear from both community feedback and just, looking at best practices. We definitely knew that we wanted to create a space where people felt safe to ask for help. That was a big thing. We found that people were waiting until the point of crisis before feeling like they could reach out. So some of the approaches that were suggested to us was having better outreach in person and online. So we are working heavily to make sure that that happens. Working with leadership to raise awareness. The proclamation that you all approved or renewed this past spring really is helping us with that. That is great. So thank you so much for just your support in that. And then also providing that education, which is just very crucial in this work. As you know, we've been out in the community. We have tried to strive to reach all of these areas that I mentioned here. We have been educating the community. We've been seeking to create events that normalize help-seeking behaviors, meeting people where they're at. As you can see, we're in a park, not in a classroom. We're really trying to gather things together. We meet monthly to talk about how best we can move forward the work that is so important to us and to this community. But again, you'll see us out at the, you see us or may not see us, as you can see in that Halloween photo. That's me in the Frankenstein mask. But you'll see us out in the community because, again, we're here. We are excited to be doing this work. In 2023, and again, this is all about the narrative because we have a great activity, so I'll hurry up with all of this. But in 2023, as you know, that proclamation really set a fire for our group. We were so excited about getting that work done. Data has been one of the biggest issues that we've had. We have not been able to secure data as well, but we do have the support for that data, which is even more important. So we are excited about looking at that. And as you know, we did apply for some federal funding to support our work because, again, funding makes things happen. And unfortunately, we did not get it. But 2024 is a new year, and our approach was still the same. In 2024, we've been out there in the community. Jackie, sorry, do you want to share some of your experiences?
So the last activity we did was the grill and chill at the police station. We were there. It was a pretty exciting event. If you haven't done that, you should do that next year. Where the Canby Police put on like a neighborhood or a citywide event to come down and get some hot dogs and ice cream and just enjoy the city. And also we went to the Canby schools. We met with the superintendent, the old one, to meet the new one. And also we have done some meeting with Canby Center. We've done the Halloween events. There's something I'm forgetting, but we've done a couple of different events at the school. We've done some things at the Canby Adult Center. The Canby Fire has been very helpful with teaching about how to safe medication, lock boxes. There's been Narcan training. And then the education is like the Mental Health Month, Substance Use Month. Funding, we've applied again for the Drug Free Community Grant, which is pretty exciting. And then we updated our resource cards, and we finally decided on a logo, and we are working on a website.
Yeah, and these next few pictures here, just again, this is just kind of examples of us being out in that community and really striving to hit some of those approaches that were suggested to us. Again, increasing that online presence. We do have a website now. It will be live in November. So again, be on the lookout for a link. This is a place where actually we would like to have feedback from the City Council about resources. What else can we do, again, to add strength to the community via our website? Is it more resources? Is it mental health resources? Is it community events? Whatever it is, we definitely want to hear feedback from all of you on that. So please keep that in mind as we're moving forward. And again, as Jackie mentioned, this is the exciting piece for us. After 3 years of working and striving, we have finally applied for funding, and we are currently waiting approval through the county process, but we got a grant, which is awesome. This is the Drug Free Communities Grant. This is a federal grant supported by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. It essentially establishes an opportunity for us to strengthen our community coalition efforts to prevent and reduce substance use among youth ages 8 to 25, which is a broad range of folks. The goals nationally are the same. We're looking to strengthen our ability or our capacity to address the issue and then to reduce youth substance use. Our requirements, we do have about 7 strategies that are all kind of compiled together in a strategic action plan. These identified strategies have been proven to, when applied, to provide kind of a comprehensive approach to addressing youth substance use in a community, and it utilizes all facets of the community. So it's making sure that we're not forgetting one group or another, but that everybody is working together to make sure that our communities are safe and have a healthy environment where kids can thrive. Foundational to this plan, again, is data. This is part of our focus, too, in the next 2 years, is to secure that data from schools, generally because this is focusing on youth and their families. So ideally, that's where we want to be. Some other just kind of miscellaneous information. The grant, again, which is we're going through an approval process at the county, is worth up to about $125,000 a year, and this is available up to 5 years with an additional opportunity to renew for an additional 5 years following that first 5 years. We are, and I'll just go ahead and slide to the next slide here. Sorry, I got to sync up my slides here. In our timeline, We do have some priorities that we have within this first quarter. Some of the things that we've been working on primarily is that we have reviewed the scope of work with our coalition. We have a renewed commitment to recruit members, just to make sure that, again, we are capturing that community voice. We are seeking to have some presentations for the school board and for the school board and Canby schools. And these presentations, again, will just be informational. And if anyone here has any contacts or links, please let us know. We definitely want to share our work with the community and really to get that those key partners to the table. We are hosting a luncheon in December. December 9th. And again, this will go a little bit more in depth about our scope of work. And really, we want to have a feedback session with the community. Does this fit your community? How can we improve it? Where can we make enhancements? What partners are at the table that are willing to support? So those are going to be some activities that we'll hopefully lift up in December. And then January, again, a lot of the work is focusing on some of the strategies that we have here. And one of the key things, that I want to focus on, and again, thank you for the time, is we want to hire a part-time consultant. This person will be external to the county. They will not be a county employee, but rather a contractor. So that could be somebody within the community. But we do want to have somebody who can lead and have their sole focus be on the Canby community. So these people will lead coalition activities. They will attend meetings. In place of me at times. I know you guys get sick and tired of me talking sometimes, but they'll coordinate the logistics of the county. Other things we'll be working on in our year one priorities is, again, just seeing what we can do to secure some of that foundational data, as I mentioned, and then some coalition or capacity building opportunities. So inviting the community to come out, learn about our process, understanding that we're not just doing this stuff without any evidence to back it up. So these are opportunities that are here. And then again, reassessing or revisiting some of those earlier conversations we had in 2022 to see, has our community increased in their awareness? Has any of our awareness activities helped move us forward? And if not, we got work to do, but if so, excellent. We're moving along. So anyways, I'm very, very, very honored to be here in Canby. I'm very pleased by just the cooperation of the community, the coalition. I came here, I feel like as an outsider, and it's been great to feel embraced by this community and for the work that people have done. So one thing we definitely want to ask, and then how you can help, Jackie.
I guess we just wanted to end is that the Canby Prevention Coalition would love to have some Canby citizens, some more join. Right now there's agencies, but it'd be nice to have some actual citizens of Canby. Please join us. You can email at canbypreventioncoalition@gmail.com, or you can email Trevor Higgins at the county. It's just, now that we have money, I would like to have more citizens that would have some input on how the money might be able to be spent. I think it's always good to have more voices on what that might look like, whatever, control we have on that, on those choices. But I think having more people involved in the decision-making of the coalition. Thank you.
Jackie and Trevor, thank you very much. And we don't get tired of you at all coming in, so thank you. Can you elaborate a little bit on the data that you're trying to collect?
Yeah, so per the requirements of our grant and by the CDC, so we are seeking to, there's 4 core measures. So these are like 30-day use, lifetime use. Oh my gosh, why am I spacing the other 2? Mayor, I will get back to you with the other 2.
Okay.
I'm so sorry about that.
No, that's okay.
But yeah, so essentially, it's just these measures within 3 grades. So it doesn't matter what grades they are, but they prefer that middle school and high school preferably. But ultimately, that's kind of what we're looking for, and that's it. So it doesn't have to be per the requirements that we've been given. It's really just addressing those 4 core and within 3 grades. So, yeah.
And then please let us know place and time for the luncheon.
Absolutely.
So we can be a part of that. And Jackie, you'd put out there that it's canbycoalition@gmail.com.
Canby Prevention Coalition.
Thank you.
And we'll go ahead and send out those links too once they're available, but yeah.
And the ever popular social media, yes? Right.
We will, yes. We'll have I believe we're going to have Facebook and maybe one other medium.
Okay.
So,
And that's still to come.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, the website's almost finished.
And, okay, perfect. Counselor Stearns, and then I'll come over to Counselor Patton. Did you have your hand up?
I'm good.
You're good? Oh.
I was just going to ask a question. You're looking for, one of the goals is to normalize help-seeking behaviors. I just thought, since we're in a public forum right now, if you could elaborate on what kind of ways that people can seek help if they need help in that.
Ultimately, just holding conversations. So I'm just going to give you just a brief example. But yeah, should an individual be dealing with stress? We all deal with stress. That's a pretty normal thing. But sometimes that stress can lead to more stress or heavy stress. And so what we're asking for is just for people really to kind of reach out that when that stress becomes unmanageable, is there an appointment that you can set to maybe go and talk to a professional that can give you skills for stress? Is there a neighbor who maybe you can lean on for support? Is there, sorry, like, I don't want to belabor.
I was just thinking, like I say, if somebody out there needs help or knows somebody that might need help, if there's something that way that we can have some good
And that's
1, 2, or
exactly-
3 options that say, hey, well, why don't you, like I know people who have trouble with alcoholism and stuff, and there's always a question of where do they need to go. I guess you can send them to the hospital, but I mean, sometimes they're not. I'm just maybe what your guys' advice
that's
to
what we're
everybody out in
working on
the
is a
public
comprehensive.
would be.
Yeah, without endorsing one organization over another, generally the county has a really great crisis line. I work for Children, Family, Community Connections. I'm tied to various different groups out there. We have a lot of subcontractors in the county that we can really connect people with very fast. But I can definitely speak to you offline. We can kind of set an appointment with that. But again, kind of as Jackie mentioned, part of our work here is really to identify what resources do work for the community. How do we get those resources promoted? Our website is going to be one of those mediums that we will hopefully be utilizing, and we can promote a little bit more around the community. Because sometimes it's hard to be like, hey, I'm going to be looking up resources on something, but when I'm looking at something on just like a coalition website, it could just be easier, maybe less intimidating, I guess.
So you plan on sharing resources with people through the website?
Absolutely. We want to do resources through the website, and then we actually want to be, again, this is what the December 9th will cover, but what mediums work best for the community? What is a cultural fit? What's a practical fit for the community? Do we want to have billboards and signs, or do we want to have something a little bit more subdued? So again, this is one of the reasons why we need to have more people at our meetings and more people, especially at the December 9th, providing feedback for us.
So show up on the December 9th meeting?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That's
Any other comments or questions at all? No, again, thank you for the update, and really appreciate that you guys keep coming and letting us know what's going on. So thank you. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Good night.
Thanks.
Before we move into our next agenda item, just again, failed to let everyone know, we got Counselor Davis on Zoom, as well as our city attorney, Mr. Doofman, here to help us out and keep us on track. What's that? No, that's just the cursor. His hand is not up.
Oh, well, look.
Next on the agenda is the Canby Public
Yeah, okay.
Library Strategic
hand up.
Plan presentation.
Have printed copies just of the plan, and then you guys have digital copies.
It's a big plan.
Paper is okay.
Thank you. Pretty pictures. Gotta have pretty pictures.
Floor is yours.
All right. Well, good evening, Mayor, Council, and the Canby community. My name is Marissa Ely. I'm the Library Director of the Canby Public Library here, and this is Lois Brooks, our Library Advisory Board Chair, along with me. Thank you so much for allowing us to be here today to present our new strategic plan from 2024 to 2027, which was approved by the Library Advisory Board at their September meeting. Yes, I will do this on my own. All right, so before we get into the new plan, I wanted to briefly show our previous strategic plan that ran from 2018 to 2023. It was very ambitious, and most staff that were here at the time it was created are no longer here. But everything you see on the screen that was crossed out was actually accomplished by library staff. We were able to complete a lot more than we thought, despite that plan being in place during a very trying time of several events, including COVID, and both city and library staff turnover. The other items that are not crossed out that we did not accomplish are in our new plan in some form or another. But I'm not going to go through that whole entire old plan. So here you see our previous mission and vision statements, which did serve us well over the years. However, we did think it was time to update those as well with our new strategic plan after all the changes that have taken place. All right, so here are the new mission and vision statements that we have updated in our new strategic plan. These statements were created by library staff, folks on our support boards, and with the Canby community front and center. So our new vision statement says the Canby Public Library is a values-driven organization and community hub dedicated to cultivating personal and collective growth through quality services and compassionate interactions. And our new mission statement says the Canby Public Library strives to provide a safe, welcoming, and dynamic environment where all come to learn, explore, invent, create, and connect with free and equitable services. By providing information, resources, assistance, programming, and access to technology, we are investing in a stronger Canby community. And in both this document and this presentation, it's important to note that the term community includes everyone in our geographic service area and then all those who actually just use our services and come into the library as well. So without further ado, here is the strategic plan. All right. So the plan is divided into 3 strategic priorities or focuses that we really want to make sure we are answering over the next couple years. And that first strategic priority is advancing community education and outreach. And we're going to do that in a couple ways. One is engaging or re-engaging with those in the Canby service area. So that means Canby area schools, educators, students. It means going to more community events, including those in unincorporated areas, since we also do serve those folks as well. It means partnering with other city departments, local businesses, and community organizations. And then, of course, increasing library card registrations, because we want everybody in this community to know that the library is here for them. The next thing we want to do under this priorities umbrella is leverage social media to educate library users on our press processes and how best to interact with our resources. Over the years, I think we've come to learn that a lot of people in our community and outside of our community don't really know what goes on behind the scenes, don't know how we make everything happen. And so we've really wanted to kind of open up our doors to show people what we do and how we do it. And then the last two kind of go together. The third one there is applying for and utilizing grant funding to expand services to underserved communities, and then supporting workforce and career development with dedicated resources. So grant funding specifically is going to be something that I'm going to be focusing on really heavily over the next few years, and beyond that, I'm sure. So the library can continue to provide what this community needs. So, in that right-hand column, the workforce and career development column, we are actually in the process of receiving grant funding from the county for that, and it's a really good example of how we're going to be able to do a lot more, hopefully without taking more from the city. All right. Strategic priority number 2 is building community through quality programming and services. And there's 3 ways that we're going to work on doing that. 1 is applying an equity lens to investigate ways that we can remove barriers and create more opportunities to stimulate curiosity and lifelong learning. So that means implementing more programs for all ages and abilities, delivering programs that highlight other cultures and communities, developing more programs that promote our seed library, which if you don't know about that, you can actually check out seeds and plant them in your garden, but we don't have anything to return. So you check them out and they're out forever. And then finally, also developing and offering Maker Lab STEAM programming and connecting all of our services and programs back to the resources we have so people can continue to learn about what they want to learn about. The second column there is creating an annual feedback survey for patron input on our resources and services. We did this last year and we've done it in the past as well, but we want to make sure we're doing that annually now so we can get more current feedback and hopefully answer whatever needs we need to answer. And then finally, engaging the community to help spread the library's value. We really want to make sure we're leveraging partnerships with our local community groups and organizations. We want to make sure we're empowering our volunteers so they have what they need to be vocal advocates for the library. And then we want to continue offering an annual library open house to share with the community all the resources that we have that you can use with your library card and some even without a library card. And then our final priority is improving departmental and organizational health and stability. So there's a couple different ways we want to do that. One is ensuring strong working relationships with our library advisory board members, a few of which are here today, Library Foundation, and our Friends of the Library group, since they are some of the most supportive groups for the library and what we actually offer because of them and their work. 2, fostering relationships with you folks here on city council, other city departments and community stakeholders, and that will involve, I think, more presentations and updates on what the library is doing and how we're getting that done. And then finally, and I think one of the most important pieces here is investing in our organizational culture, staff well-being and growth. That means having a training plan so we can make sure staff are ready to do what they need to do day in and day out. Providing learning and development opportunities so they feel engaged and supported, evaluating their capacity to make sure they can get everything done that they need to get done since we're a very small group and we know that burnout is a real thing, and then focusing on sustainability long term. One of my favorite books by Robin Sharma, he says, the bigger the dream, the more essential the team. And so in this case, that means all of the puzzle pieces that you see there, each and every one is very important in the success of this library and this city. And so we want to work with and support our city, all of our boards and our community groups in order to create a healthy and stable library and city. And then one of the last things I wanted to show you is just a couple of the city council goals and objectives that should look very familiar to you guys. that our strategic plan indirectly addresses. So promoting financial stability, aligning our resources to address future community growth, which we're seeing, and then enhancing engagement and communications that represent broad perspectives. So here are just some pictures of our wonderful staff who serve this community every day without expectation. I feel incredibly lucky to be a part of this team and to work alongside each and every one of them every day. I look forward to coming to work. One of the least favorite parts of my day is leaving, and you can even ask my staff that. And that is it's worth way more to me than I can even say. And then I did also want to just thank our Library Advisory Board, especially our Chair Lois here, our foundation and our Friends members for the support that they've given and continue to give the library. So to end, we just want to ask for your support of our new strategic plan, 2024 to 2027, so we can continue to be that pillar for the community. And then from library staff and all the Library Advisory Board, thank you for listening and thank you for choosing to lead this city forward every day that you're here.
Well,
And
thank
then
you.
here's just some contact information, but I'm always open to feedback, questions, all that good stuff. Definitely want to just do a good job for this city.
Well, Marissa, thank you, and thank you to the library board for putting this together. This is, it's been a very successful couple of years that you have been working on a number of things, and yes, COVID was not friendly to a lot of that process. So, no, these are great objectives, and I appreciate how you included how they tie into the city's goals. So thank you for doing that. I don't have any questions. I think this is very well done and very well laid out. So thank you on that front. Does anybody have any questions or comments for Marissa at all? Yes, Councilor Patton.
I would just like to thank you for all the work that you have done in the library. It has been awesome to see it evolve, and I greatly appreciate it.
Could not do it without all of the people behind me, including my library manager, Amber. She's a big deal back there. We are very supportive to one another, and I honestly don't think that I could do my job without her at this point, so thank you.
Perfect.
And then just one more thing to end, because I always have to plug a program. Speaking of grants, we did get a grant to actually have this gal, her name is Stephanie from Kalapuya Weaving, to do a Native American Heritage Month presentation on November 5th. It's going to be at 6 o'clock in the Willamette Room. Basically, what she's going to be talking about is how we can all better serve and protect the land we're on and the people that have lived here and cultivated this land. So yeah, grant funding from the American Indian Library Association. We're very happy and just hoping to have a good turnout on that day.
Perfect, thank you. I do need a motion to approve the library strategic plan, if someone would. Councilor Patton?
I move to approve the library strategic plan as presented.
Second.
Motion been made by Councilor Patton and seconded by Councilor Stearns to approve the, thank you, I just wasn't sure if someone was chiming in on something. The library strategic plan for the 24-25 years. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? And anyone opposed? Seeing none. It is approved.
Thank
Go
you.
forth and conquer. Thank you, Marissa.
This will be up on the website soon in case anyone else wants to see it, but thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, next on the agenda is citizen input and community announcements. This is an opportunity for audience members to address the city council on items that are not on the agenda. If you are attending in person, please fill out one of these beautiful yellow cards that's back there on the podium by the back door. Fill it out and please bring it over to the deputy city recorder, and you will be given 3 minutes to address the council. We will do our best to address the issue here in the meeting, or myself and staff will look into it and see where we go from there. I have a number of yellow cards, but that's for later topic. Todd Davis wants to talk about dogs off leash. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Please come up to the microphone and state your name, and we've got the rest of your information.
Okay. Name is Todd Davis. I live in the Willow Creek area, northeast part of town. My wife and I, we like walking Logging Road, the north side of it, over by the disc golf, and I was just told the name of the park area to the east of there.
Wayside,
Oh, Wayside?
Canby Wayside.
Yeah, thank you. So we walk that area a lot. There's a problem happening that a lot of people on the Logging Road, by the disc golf, at the Wayside Park area, let their dogs off leash. Some of the dogs are relatively well-behaved. Some of them are not well-behaved at all. Charge you, jump on you, not exaggerating. I would like to see there be signs put up that make a person that thinks about letting their dog off leash, like, oh, that sign looks official, I better not let him off leash. There are signs right now, but the ones in the area that are closer to the river, the Wayside Park, they look more like a generic company makes a sign, and then you grab your dog baggies there. It does say, leash and pick up after your pet, but it doesn't have any, city ordinance and a number, and it doesn't look official or threatening in any way. I think that we need better signage. This is happening on the Logging Road, too. I don't know if you need a sign every mile or what, because people get on the Logging Road from wherever, and they probably just pretend like they don't see the signs. But I also think we need enforcement and certain fine amounts. And so I see my clock ticking down. I got a minute left. I don't even need to use the end of it. I think I've gotten my message across. But how might I find out any actions that you might take to solve this problem? Do I just come back another week, or do
Nope.
you?
That's a great question, Mr. Davis, and thank you for coming tonight. I see Ms. Stein scribing feverishly, and I know our Public Works Director is here as well, so you picked a good night to be here with both of them here. I know that they will be discussing this and looking at some options perhaps that might need to be taken, and Ms. Stein will follow up probably in a couple weeks and let you know where things are at.
Oh, and you have my phone number on the card that I turned in.
Correct.
So we're good.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Yes.
Can I be dismissed?
You are good to go. Thank you. Thanks for coming in.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, I have no other cards, and is there anyone online, Teresa?
No.
All right, we're going to move into item 6 this evening is the consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve the consent agenda that includes the minutes of the September 11th, 2024 City Council work session, the minutes of the September 18th, 2024 City Council work session and regular meeting, and the minutes of the October 2nd, 2024 City Council work session and regular meeting.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you, Councilor Patton. The motion has been made by Council President Hensley and seconded by Councilor Patton to approve the consent agenda, which includes the September 11th, 2024 City Council work session minutes, the September 18th, 2024 City Council work session and regular meeting minutes, and approval of the October 2nd, 2024 City Council work session and regular meeting minutes. Any comments or questions? No? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? That passes 6-0. Moving into ordinances and resolutions. The first ordinance this evening is 1632, an ordinance authorizing the city administrator to amend the personal services contract with Kerner McLeod Incorporated, consulting engineers for design and construction phase engineering services for the extension of Walnut Street to Highway 99E. And this is second reading. Eileen, you want to give a quick recap and
Yeah, so this would approve the design contract and allow us to move into the design for the extension of Walnut Street, where it connects with 99E. So this is the second reading, and nothing else to add, Jerry? Anything else? Okay.
Unless there's any questions.
Yeah.
Okay. Councilor Patton.
I move to adopt ordinance number 1632, authorizing the city administrator to amend the personal services agreement with Kurt McLeod Incorporated Consulting Engineers in the amount of $164,000 for design and construction phase engineering services for the extension of Walnut Street to Highway 99E on second reading.
Second. Motion's been made by Counselor Patton and seconded by Counselor Sassy to approve ordinance 1632, an ordinance authorizing the city administrator to amend the personal services contract with Kern McLeod Incorporated Consulting Engineers for design and construction phase engineering services for the extension of Walnut Street to Highway 99E. Any other comments, questions?
Is this a project that the mayor really wants to happen?
I think that everyone wants this to happen.
Kidding.
So, roll call vote.
Oh, my gosh, yes. Counselor Sassy. Counselor Sassy.
Aye.
Counselor Stearns.
Aye.
Council President Hensley.
Aye.
Counselor Maldonado.
Aye.
Counselor Patton.
If I could say aye any more emphatically, pom-poms and fireworks would be employed.
Heck, aye.
And Counselor Davis.
Aye.
Great, that passes 6-0. Next up is ordinance 1633. Ordinance authorizing the city administrator to extend a 1 to 2 year contract with MSNW Group LLC in the amount of $144,960 per year for custodial services for the city of Canby, and the first reading.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Jerry Nelzine, Public Works Director.
Mr. Nelzine, good evening.
Yeah, just, this is something that was brought before you last year for a 1 to 2 year contract, and our Facilities Department has recommended that we move forward with another year contract with this company. So I'm here to ask you to approve this so that we can have custodial services come the first of the year. So I have pretty detailed stuff in the staff report and everything else, and if you have any questions, I'm here to answer them.
My only question, and I'm sorry that I don't recall this right now from the staff report, how much of an increase is this?
It's
percentage-wise?
It's the same price.
Same price.
It's what we agreed on in the original RFP.
Okay.
So that's good. It wasn't an increase.
Perfect. Any other questions? No? Okay. Take a motion if someone desires or not.
Oh, sure. Mr. Mayor, I will move to approve on ordinance number 1633, an ordinance authorizing the city administrator to amend the personal services contract with, that's the wrong one. No, it's not. 1633 says currently filed. Here we go. That's mine. I'm reading that. This is what I was reading. The proposed motion was wrong. I'm so sorry. I will read up into the presentation part. I move to approve ordinance number 1633, an ordinance authorizing the city administrator to extend a 1 to 2 year contract with MSNW Group LLC in the amount of $144,960 per year for custodial services for the city of Canby. First reading. Yeah, proposed motion's wrong.
Thank you, Mr. Maldonado.
That was a lot.
Motion's been made by Council President Hensley and seconded by Councilor Maldonado to approve ordinance 1633, ordinance authorizing the city administrator to extend a 1 to 2 year contract with MSNW Group LLC in the amount of $144,960 per year for custodial services for the city of Canby. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? That carries 6-0. Thank you all. Old business this evening.
City Attorney Legal Services Appointment. Ms. Stein.
Council, you issued an RFP and narrowed that down to one firm that you wanted to interview. You interviewed that firm, and so I think you were ready to make an appointment of Barry Elsner and Hammond to your permanent city attorney position.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I move to appoint Barry Elsner Hammond LLP for city attorney services for the city of Canby and authorize the city administrator to bring a contract for approval during a future council meeting.
Second.
Okay. Motion has been made by Council President Hensley and seconded by Council Maldonado to appoint Barry Elsner and Hammond LLP for city attorney services for the city of Canby and authorize the city administrator to bring a contract for approval during a future council meeting. Any further discussion? Yes, Councilor Patton.
I would like to continue to see the cost breakout that we have gotten every once in a while with the month and how it's tracking, just as we continue on. There's no glaring thing. I think it's just good for us to keep an eye on that and sort of start, it gives us an opportunity to see how those services track and start to figure out if there's any real correlations with peaks and valleys as the years progress for that sort of thing.
Okay.
Just a comment on, since Mr. Doofman is online, and I would like to bid adieu, as this will be your last official meeting with us, I believe, and we'll have new representation with the firm. So I just wanted to thank you, David, for your services. You've been quite a help and a benefit to the city, and I appreciate you.
Yep.
It's very nice of you. Thank you very much, and appreciate my time as well. It's been an honor.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Councilor Davis, did you want to weigh in yet, yay or nay on Barry Elsner?
Aye.
Okay. That carries 6-0. Thank you. All right. Next under old business is the Canby Adult Center ARPA request. And again, Ms. Stein.
Yeah, so council, I think where we left this off last time is you have a request from the Canby Adult Center. As you know, they are moving to the United Methodist Church. They are seeking the city's continued financial support in the form of the ARPA dollars that the council had previously committed to the adult center when it was staying at the adult center. I don't know what we're going to call that building now. So the request for your consideration is, I believe, $500,000, the remaining amount. There had been some discussion the last time the council discussed this about looking at a lesser amount. And I think the decision, tonight is, what is that amount going to be?
Okay. Before we get into, I think, council questions and discussion, I know there is a couple of cards here from those that want to provide some input, so I will go let them speak first. First is Mr. Galitz.
I'd like Kathy to go first. I want to add to her comments.
Okay, all right. Well, and then, so Kathy, you have 3 minutes, and then Mr. Bell has given you 3 minutes, so you have 6 minutes to share your thoughts with us.
Thank you. I won't use the whole 6 minutes. Good evening, everybody. This is the third time I've been here in less than 6 months, which is definitely a record for me. It's nice to see you all this evening, Mayor, councilors. Good to see you up there, Councilor Davis. Thank you for this opportunity to come back and speak to you one more time about the Adult Center, the role that we play in this community, and to, as Administrator Stein said, to ask you to please maintain a commitment of funding to us as we look to buy a home of our own. And I do just want to clarify, we're not moving to the Canby United Methodist Church. Our plan is to buy it. And I only specify because there was some confusion about that during the working session as to whether the ownership is going to transfer to the Canby Adult Center. The Methodist community will continue to use the space, but we will own the building. Just to recap, and were you able to circulate? I've given you lots of numbers and words, and tonight I just chose to give a quick visual of the variety of activities that we support and have supported over the years. So I'm not going to bury you with a bunch more words, but I do just want to recap some of the key statistics for the Adult Center. In the last fiscal year, we prepared and served almost 48,000 hot meals to people homebound. 2/3 of those meals went to older adults who are homebound and not able to get out. The other third is provided in our dining room where people come in and have a cup of coffee and share some fellowship and conversation and very often get out of isolation in their homes. In the same time period, we provided over 3,200 rides to people. Some of those are just to and from the center for people who aren't driving anymore. We also provide rides to essential medical appointments all throughout the Tri-County area. Those are services that are not readily available. And then a bunch of recreational trips. Some of the pictures you're seeing there in that packet. They go out and have a lot of fun. Exercise, recreation, crafting, continuing education. Most weekdays, a visitor can come to the center on our bus by about 9:30. They can exercise, they can attend a class, they can have lunch, and then stay for a movie or a line dancing, and then go home on our bus around 3 o'clock, all free of charge. We're very grateful for the relationship we have had with the city and continue to have, but we have simply outgrown our space. The building needs maintenance and upgrades if it's to continue to meet our needs post-COVID. The city previously committed $500,000 in ARPA fund balances, not operating funds, to support some of that maintenance and those upgrades, but that amount would not cover all of the work required for the building to convert it to what we need today. Meanwhile, as I mentioned the last time I was before you, the fact that we don't own the building, nor the land that the building sits on, has proven to make fundraising extremely challenging. And we have been told that from multiple sources. We now have an opportunity to purchase a building of our own, entering into what I consider to be a really exciting partnership with the church, a new model for how to share space creatively, not just with the church, but with the preschool and a variety of other services that are offered in that building. Where we are today, as the building we're currently in was built with community development block grant funds. Those funds come with some restrictions, and it is not clear whether the city will be eventually responsible to reimburse those funds to Housing and Urban Development if the building is put to a different use. That original amount to build the current building on Ivy Street was a little over $500,000. We heard at the last working group meeting from a housing and community development representative that city support to the Canby Adult Center as it moves would likely satisfy any concerns of HUD's over reimbursing those funds. We also have that in writing from Mark Serwaz. From the document I submitted and recirculated after the working group meeting, the 2023 final rule, which is a very ominous title, on ARPA funds, it's clear that there are some restrictions on the use of those funds, but onward allocation to a nonprofit is an approved use. ARPA funds that you hold have to be programmed by the end of the year. If it's approved for our new building, we would use those funds for pretty much what we were proposing at the Ivy space. It is seismic upgrades, it's fire suppression systems, it's an emergency generator, not only to make the building safe for our community, but our goal would also be to serve as an emergency shelter for the community more generally if it were needed. I do respectfully ask the city to consider if you're sure enough about how or if you'll use that South Ivy building that you're ready to program those funds in the next 2 months. And I suggest that approving that balance for the Canby Adult Center is probably the cleanest solution. I also suggest it's the right thing to do. I've said before, our nonprofit status makes an exception in the county. Senior centers around us cost their governments anywhere from $600,000 to $1.5 million a year. We don't cost you virtually nothing. We are a very good deal. Granting these funds don't put a dent in your operating budget, but it sends a very clear message that you support and value your older adults. And I got 15 seconds, yes, so we appreciate your support, and thank you.
Thank you, Kathy, appreciate it. Mr. Galitz.
Thank you. You said only 3.5 minutes. Sorry. Oh, wait, I'm already on. My name's Keith Galitz. I'm the retired past president of Canby Telecom, now DirectLink. Been a resident of this community since 2007. My wife, who has multiple sclerosis, uses a walker 100% of the time or a wheelchair. I'd like to highlight 2 elements of what Kathy just spoke about. First of all, my wife uses the adult center anywhere from 3 to 2 days a week. She attends the exercise class, the lunch, and the movie. She goes to lunch 2 or 3 times a week. The lunchroom on a regular basis is packed. There's at least a half dozen to 8 people that are using walkers or wheelchairs. You cannot transverse the lunchroom on a packed day. The church is going to give us, the new facility is going to give us additional space for dining, which we cannot get in the new current facility. The second is a parking issue. Have you ever tried to get in that parking lot during the day? There are no parking spots. With the purchase of the new building, we're going to gain 130 parking places. It's going to allow us to provide additional services and additional opportunities for our senior citizens. So I ask you and encourage you to transfer that $500,000 to the Canby Center for the Adult Center for the new facility. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Keith, appreciate it. Thank you both for your comments and for the group for being here this evening. So here's for the group, and if I'm leaving anything out. So ARPA funds, we did discuss that we're going to make a commitment of $500,000 to the Canby Adult Center, and this was all discussed prior to the decision for them to purchase the church and move to a new location. My understanding with that building, we're looking, correct me if I'm wrong, Eileen, HVAC, kitchen, what other, no, not kitchen, Jason?
From what I remember, the $500,000, what I have been told was the $500,000 would cover the seismic, the HVAC, replacing the windows, but the responsibility that would just cover that, but it would still leave the kitchen uncovered, that the Canby Adult Center would have to try and come up with the funds to update the kitchen.
Wasn't it going to include the fire suppression as well?
And the fire, yes, that, but the kitchen was not included. The kitchen upgrade was not included in that $500,000.
Thank you for clarifying that. So the HVAC, fire suppression, windows, and seismic. So the question, or I guess the comments that we've discussed as a group before is, with that commitment of the money, so does it follow the Canby Adult Center as an organization to their new property? Or is this the commitment to do these upgrades on the building for our whatever future use that is? Now, with that being said, we have not, as a council or as a city, determined yet what we want to do or plan to do or would like big pie in the sky dreams for this space to be. But we do know, and I think we talked about this today, Eileen, that if we don't do something that meets the criteria of the block grants, then yes, we do need to pay that back. So that's where we are at, I believe. Am I missing anything? Yes, Councilor Patton.
No, I have some questions.
Okay, so, all right, so am I leaving anything out? No, okay. What's your questions?
the way I understand it, when the community block grant person was here, is that if we give the adult center group the $500,000, that would either forgive the block grant responsibility to the city, or it would transfer the responsibility of those block grants from the city to the Canby Adult Center organization. Is that in fact correct? I see lots of heads nodding yes. Okay.
And I think, Councilor Kennedy, I think what it would do would be to satisfy the city's obligation.
Okay.
Ultimately, the city received the block grant funds, and so whether it's using it in that way or repurposing the building in some way, probably a third or fourth option as well. But ultimately, it would be eliminating that obligation from the city.
And if memory serves me correctly, and I'm not sure how this is stuck in my head, but it was something like $512,000 or something like that was the original block grant amount? Or something along those lines?
I think that's sticking in my head, yeah.
Roughly that.
How many years ago?
Yeah.
512, okay. So, I mean, okay. I have some thoughts, but I will let some other people go before.
Yeah, I want to make sure if there's any questions that we need to get answered. Any other questions at all from this group, to either the adult center team or to Eileen?
This is a question, but the question is, what is that building, and I guess you may not be able to answer it all right now, but that building right now, how much would it cost to get it up to snuff right now?
Kathy can probably answer that question.
I mean, like I say, yeah,
Well, it depends on what up to snuff means.
well, yeah, I know, I know I'm being vague, but I mean, obviously, if the building stays, there's a dollar amount that must be spent to keep it from being just a museum monument or something that we have on the corner.
As I understand it, based on conversations I've heard from other folks, it would be close to $1 million. Because you have the $500,000 in seismic, windows, fire suppression, HVAC, and then the kitchen, the roof, then the kitchen would need to be dealt with. That equipment in the kitchen is old. There's a problem with the refrigerator unit because apparently the my thing is not on. The refrigeration unit is in the attic of the building because that makes a whole ton of sense. And so that causes problems. So the whole HVAC system or the whole compressor system for the refrigeration unit is going to need to be moved. I mean, you would literally be looking at least $1 million to get that building back up so that another organization can just move in there and start doing something similar.
So if we agree the $1 million is a close amount, then what we are saying basically in effect, that should we spend the $500,000 on the building, then we'd have a $500,000 deficit. If we don't, we have $1 million that needs to come from somewhere in order to make it useful.
Correct.
I'm the $1 million, I know is ballpark, and, but still.
But you're putting money into a building, we don't know what business would want to go in there next. What if we put in this glorified kitchen and then they go, well, we're not going to.
I mean, I don't know if we even have the option to sell it because there's no land underneath that we owned.
I don't think the building's worth fixing up, to tell you the truth.
Yes, Councilor Penn.
So I have a wild and crazy idea. This building has been a problem for this city council and this city for decades. It is, again, a building that is built on land that is not owned by the city. And back in the day, when the good old boys sat around the table and knew everybody, and that seemed to make sense, it made sense, and now it doesn't. And one of the problems that previous city councils had was that there was no good exit strategy. There was no feasible off-ramp because there was no way that the city was going to evict the Canby Adult Center group from that building because they had nowhere else to go. And so it meant continuing to put lipstick on the pig that is that building and continue to, be tethered to the school district for paying the rent on that property along with the pool. So I've been putting some thought into this. And the seed that I'm going to plant and the direction that I would prefer to see the city go in is that we give the adult center $512,000, which would cover what was originally purchased or received in block grants for that building. So the $500,000 from the ARPA funds, and then figure out where we can get 12 or so odd $1,000 elsewhere in the budget to send them off so that they have the starting funds to get the Methodist Church prepped. And I will just, as a point of interest, I guess you would call me a dormant member of the Methodist Church. And so, just for purposes, like, disclaimer purposes, I am tied to the church in a way, but this does not cloud my judgment. And then use this opportunity, now that the city is out from underneath these block grants, to get out of that building. Rather than spend $1 million to fix up that building, which in 10 more years, because to be honest with you, and this is one of the reasons why I asked this question in the other thing, was like, really, what are some of those costs? I don't think that building was built for longevity, based on how many times and different upgrades that it's needed. I think it would behoove the council to not, like, once this $500,000 some odd dollars is given out, we do not find a new tenant for that building. We allow the pool, because we just went through this whole thing where the pool wanted like a party room or whatever. The building is right next to the pool. If they want to use it as a party room, that's great. If there's an organization that wants to use it for a meeting or whatever, we can. But then build into our budget over the next couple of years the funds to scrape that building off that property and be done with it. And have us be the city council that future city councils say, thank gosh, some city council finally got us out from underneath that building, rather than 10 or 15 years from now having the city council say, why are we still stuck paying the school rent for a building on property that we don't own? So that is my caveat. So that's my thought.
Thank you, sir. Councilor Maldonado.
I was going to ask the same thing. Why? It sounds like it's just going to be a better option to get rid of it than try to keep fixing it up. The building is pretty old. It's dilapidated. It's going to need a heck of a lot more, no matter how much we throw at it.
Okay, so
I think the longevity of it would be a better option to get rid of it.
Okay, so I'm going to try to unpack. My mic is on.
No, I was saying,
Jim.
the attorney had
Yeah,
something instead
I'm going to try to unpack this for a minute here before we move any further. The issue at hand is the $500,000, and where is that? Does it stay with the building or does it follow? Not what we're going to do with the building. So I want to cover what we need to cover tonight, because we do need to circle back and figure out what we're going to do with this building. Since we don't have the adult center there, what are we going to want to do? So let's stay track on that, please. Councilor Davis, and on Mr. Doofman.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. And first of all, I wanted to really thank Kathy for her presentation. She doesn't even touch at all the volunteer activity that actually occurs up at the adult center. So, and Kathy, you're doing an outstanding job up there. So thank you for your presentation. I do agree with Jason on that the funds should follow the Canby Adult Center. I've had the opportunity to do just this week a disaster seminar there at the library, and also a lot of interest in Hope Village. And the discussion comes in quite a bit, and the fire department currently utilizes the current adult center for cooling during the daytime when we have 170-degree temperatures, or a warming shelter when we have freezing temperatures and we lose power. I really appreciate the foresight on the part of the Canby Adult Center to have this money follow them to upgrade the fire protection systems in the facility that they're moving to, and also the emergency generator system and seismic. That's outstanding for our city to know that we have an evacuation center that we can utilize, and we have utilized it, but this is going to enhance our programs for emergency preparedness by having an emergency generator system up at the new facility, plus a lot more room for feeding in the event of a catastrophic event. So great thinking on their part. I do agree with Jason's recommendation in regards to at least the 500,000. I can't answer for Eileen or our finance director in regards to the 12,000 or the additional funds. Whether or not we can afford that or not, I'd lean on them for that information. And I do agree with the mayor that I would really like to have a work session in the future to where the councilors can all discuss the future for that building, and that ties into the bigger picture for the Ackerman complex as well as the property up there. Hopefully we can work something out with the school district in the future, but I think that that's going to take, if not one or two work sessions. So again, thank you, Kathy, and thank you, Keith, for your comments as well.
Thank you, Councilor Davis. Mr. Doofman.
Thank you, Mayor. Just for the record, to make sure that the council has all the facts that are sort of at play here, and this admittedly is more towards what to do with the building or plays into the future of the building. But I just want to be sure that it's out there. So the city renewed the lease for the building, or the land really, with the school district in 2022. It extended the lease by 10 years. So you've got a lease with the school district that'll run at least through 2032. I say that because it will automatically renew unless the city gives notice to the district that it doesn't want to renew the lease after the 10 years. But the point that I just want to be sure is that the council is aware of is that you pay $20,000 a year currently to the district, and whether the adult center's in the building or not, or another use is in the building or not, that money would be owed to the district going forward. Make absolutely no judgment on how you use the $500,000, and certainly legally you're absolutely able to use that towards the adult center. Personally, I think it's a great use, but I just want to be sure that other piece in terms of the ongoing costs of the building relative to the district is out there for your information and your knowledge.
Thank you, Mr. Doofman. Appreciate that. Council President Hensley.
Thank you. This whole issue has been kind of a conundrum for me. There's no doubt in my mind that you provide the best service for our seniors, and I wholeheartedly appreciate everything you do. So therefore, I, of course, want to give all of the dollars. But then there was a part of me that was like, well, we gave the dollars to the building. So actually discussing the potential future of the building has been good for me tonight. Because if we're actually going to discuss the potential of getting rid of the building, then we don't really need the money to follow the building. So this has been a good discussion for me. I would, however, not agree with increasing it. I would stay with, I wanted to give them the 2 that we gave our other community partners and keep 3 with the building. But if we're going to go with the 5, I would say that would be the absolute cap, because that was already what was approved. I don't want to go back and try and revisit the budget and rework numbers for $12,000, which seems to me to be a bargain for 2 decades of use of the building. So I would not want to increase the amount, but I could be persuaded to go ahead with the 5. That's all I have.
Yes, Councilor Stearns.
Kind of 2 separate, one I've already reiterated. It would seem that unless we decide to raise the building or something to that effect, that spending the $500,000 and giving it to the Canby Adult Center would create a $500,000 future budget hole that it would need to be filled unless the choice is to get rid of the building. So I think that, even though we don't want to discuss that completely, I think it's just really part of the necessity, because giving to one person costs something else. And if we decide to do this, that's fine, but we have to do it with our eyes open, knowing that we are creating a $500,000 potential shortfall that will have to be met later on if we do that. So I just want to make that very clear, that we can't escape the accounting reality of that. It seems like the need is there, and it'll need to be spent whether or not, unless we chose to raise the building, then we have the demolition costs, which I don't know what that would be. But the other thing is, which is kind of a unrelated matter, but sort of related, is I would feel a whole lot more comfortable with the $500,000 given to the nonprofit for the purpose of housing the adult center, that it came with some strings or restrictions, that if for some reason it was decided after they moved in that it wasn't all rainbows and unicorns, that which things happen and things change, that somehow that if they were to try to have to sell the building or something, that the money would get returned to the city to be used for that purpose, or some other restriction on it. And that would make me feel a whole lot better. And I'm not saying that because I distrust you. I'm saying that because I've seen enough times where even people with the best intentions have plans that don't come to fruit due to circumstances beyond their control or that were unforeseeable. So those are my two kind of separate comments. One is, we can't pretend that it costs us nothing to give the money to the Canby Adult Center. And two, if we do want to give it to the Canby Adult Center, and I'm not saying I'm opposed to giving money to the Canby Adult Center, I'm just saying we have to recognize it does cost something to do it. A bill that we will have to pay. And the other thing is that I would think that giving it to a nonprofit for that very purpose that we intended, that somehow the best we can do it, put either a lien on it or something that says if hey, we want to go and sell it and do something else and, move the adult center. I'm not saying that happened, but I'm just saying that I've been around long enough and seen enough deals to know that I think I would feel more comfortable with some sort of restriction. I don't know if our attorney can see if those kind of things can be arranged, or yeah.
Okay. If that's a question now, yes. I mean, there's all sorts of conditions that the council can choose if they wanted to put on the grant or giving of that money, certainly.
I just don't want to say, here's the money and go do whatever we want with it. I want to basically have a little bit of some restrictions on that. Guardrails.
Councilor Maldonado.
I would agree with Councilor Stearns on that. Again, it's not about distrust or anything, but if we're going to say, okay, here this is, we need to make sure that we're not left footing 100% of that. And I mean, the building itself is substantially dilapidated, but there's got to be a way that we can compensate that as well, instead of us being the ones taking all the hit.
Okay.
We just signed the 10-year lease with the school district. Yeah. How does it work whenever the adult center moved into that building? Did they sign a lease as well, or a bargaining chip of some sort?
That I'm not sure.
My understanding is that the city has an agreement with the adult center. It's fairly modest, and if my memory serves me here, I think the adult center pays about $500 a month to the city, so it's nominal. But again, I'm sure that the idea there is, given the service they're providing, the city's not going to be looking to charge us some sort of market rate. But the city then has an obligation to the school district annually in the amount of $20,000.
Your voice shut off.
Oh, no.
That's for the land. I can always renegotiate that, but.
Am I allowed to?
Oh, the internet.
Yeah. You want to come up to the microphone, whomever?
Sorry, Mr. Doofman, your mic cut out for a moment there.
I just want to clarify, the lease that we have with the city is a yearly renewable. At the time that the city moved to the 10-year lease in 2022, that did not pass on to us. And my understanding, that $20,000, that's for the land that is the adult center and the pool. It isn't, you're not just paying that for an empty building.
Gotcha.
So.
We're subletting that portion for that.
Okay.
Okay. Counselor Patton?
So to go along with that, I also agree that it would be good to put some guardrails on that transfer, especially, and for me, I'm plugged in, right? Yeah, I've got my button on. Thought I was coming to get yelled at. Anyways, I agree with Daniel that we have seen situations where, we do this and then there's changes or delays or whatever. So that totally makes sense. But also considering we are transferring this money in an effort to transfer the community block grant thing, I would want something built into that so that way it's very clear that by taking this money, that is what is happening here. And one of the reasons why, if you were not to go through with this project, it needs to come back, is because the reason we're giving it to you is for updates to this building. And then if they decide there's a different building that they want, and, that would be a different conversation. But at least there's some guardrails on that. On that transfer. And I did want to let you know, I do know for sure, I did not assume that if we took the building off that we would be able to reduce our lease to the school. I'm well aware of the fact that that is not a thing, so.
Okay. Counselor Sassy?
You're going to love this. So I can't think of a better facility. We committed. And I grew up, you commit, you commit. The building that's there is old, it's decrepit. They're still going to be there for 2 more years. So then that lease goes down to 6 that we have to pay, correct? Kind of, ballparkish. I know the permits you have to go through, that'll be a nightmare. 500,000 is pretty cheap considered what we paid for that arch that doesn't feed people. Doesn't bus people.
Oh my gosh.
Doesn't make people happy. Doesn't let them play cards. So there's your common sense right there. I'm not an accountant, but I see a lot of stuff in town. So yes, get them the money so they can get going and let's get this thing done. I remember sitting in the back seats hearing about this. Let's get it done. That's it.
Thank you, sir. All right, so is he waving? Thanks, Lauren. Counselor Davis, hi, hello to you as well.
You can tell I don't attend my Zoom very often. Mayor, are we the place to maybe propose a motion here?
I was just going to wrap up with just clarifying where we're at. In that, yes, it sounds like the desire is to stay with the commitment of the $500,000 of the ARPA funds to the Canby Adult Center. I think there's some questions that we need to get answered in terms to next pieces, which I can get to. But is there any? Is there any other discussion?
We have to put the guardrails in the motion.
Well, then what are those guardrails that you guys think are necessary?
Well, or is I think it's been made very clear tonight that there is a consensus that the council would like to give the money to the adult center organization. But there are some more layers of the onion that need to be peeled back. And so to me, it would seem more prudent to take that at face value and then work that and have, direct Eileen and our city legal services to come up with what that would look like. And then at the next meeting or whatever meeting within the next meeting or two, actually have the prepared motion to make it. Because I just worry if we make a very generic motion now. I've seen it before where we've done that and then we end up having to come back and redo it anyways, and then it's an amendment or whatever, yada, yada, where it seems pretty clear tonight that we're committed to doing this. We just gotta do our homework and draft the motion. Does that work for you, Councilor Davis?
Jason, I do agree with you. I think perhaps the motion I was going to propose is that to make a motion that our intent is to transfer the ARPA $500,000 to the Canby Adult Center and instruct the city administrator to work with legal to draft up the guardrails, if you want to call them that, the restrictions on that money, and have it prepared for us at the next city council meeting.
I would second that.
Okay,
We have 3 seconds. Does that count for
There you
something?
go.
so motion's been made by Counselor Davis and seconded by
Everybody?
All of us.
Put our names in a hat.
yeah, various counselors to move forward with the commitment of the $500,000 of ARPA funds to the Canby Adult Center, with staff to bring back guardrail guidelines
For a formal.
for formal approval. Did I capture all that? Is that what the desire of the council is?
Yeah, and there should be some standard things that the attorneys could, that go with these kind of deals to make sure that, that if the deal, if they don't get it, doesn't work out, that we get the money back so that we can maybe have a few more years at the current location and fix up the building or something.
Okay.
I just have a question. Did we have guardrails on the fairgrounds that we gave money to, and did we have guardrails on Canby Utility that we gave money to? There you go.
We did
Thank you.
not.
Yep. Good point, Mr. Sassy.
Well, just a second. So the guardrail, the way the motion was done for the fairgrounds was that the money had to be used for the new building. That's the guardrail. The guardrail for what?
That's what they're, new building.
The guardrail for Canby Utility was that it had to be used for fire hydrants and that water thing.
Yeah.
And from what I understand, the water thing has not happened, correct? At least the last I had talked, the water line was may or may not going to happen, and that money was not going to be given to the Canby Utility Department until that was done. So that, by calling out those specific projects, and that was the guardrail. With this, I think it's a little different because they don't quite own the building yet. This is several years out. That's, to me, that is the big difference here.
wanted to ask that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Okay. All right, all those in favor? Anyone opposed? Okay, so the motion passes. We will stay with the commitment of the $500,000. We will work, Mr. Doofman, it'll be Barry Elsner team in general. If you don't know Mr. Lauren Bell, you guys will get very well acquainted. I'm presuming you're their lawyer, yes?
Correct.
There you go. Couple of pieces that I think are worth having conversation about, or at least pieces that I think the council should ask for more information on, is what we want to do or how we want to do the $12,000 balance for the block grant piece. And then the other piece is about, granted it's 2 years out yet, but what is that going to look like with a lease with the school district for taking, if there's a decision to scrap the building, what is that going to look like? I think that's worth a
Sounds like
conversation.
Very
maybe
lengthy
that-
work session in and of itself, yeah.
Okay. Anything else on this particular matter?
Not
No?
at this moment.
Kathy et al., thank you very much for being here. Really appreciate, I know this was not the most pleasant work to get here, but we got here, so thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Have a good night.
Take care, be safe.
Next up is mayor's business. So I guess I'll just start with this. Thank you to the council for
this conversation regarding the adult center and the ARPA funds. This is the stuff that we do. This is the hard choices and conversations that we do up here that I think a lot of people don't realize that this is the stuff that gets handed to us after X amount of years of doing something or not doing something. And so I appreciate you all for the hard work on the heavy lifting on this issue. I think it was the right decision. It's going to be, I'm excited for them. I also somewhere in the translation missed that they bought the church and are not
buying, but yeah.
they're buying it.
It's not
So
just a residential.
it'll be a continued win for our community. Adult centers serve a tremendous purpose and benefit in terms of the livability for a community. We've seen, I'm friendly with Mayor Kaiser and Malala, and just things that have gone on with their adult center and lack thereof, and other communities as well, envy that we have an adult center that we have. And so I think this will expand their services. I think they'll be even busier than what they've been. So I commend you all on that.
I'll tell you, with my father goes to that adult center, and the quality of his well-being, just being there around people, his peers, is substantial.
For sure. Councilor Patton.
So just as I understand it and chatting with folks, the 2 years delay of this is something that is a newer development. The process was tracked to move faster, but something came up.
Okay.
And that is what has pushed this out further, and it's happened fairly recently.
Gotcha.
And that's more reason to make sure there are strings attached so that if something else happens, it pushes it out another 2 years.
There you go.
Or 4 years or 8 years.
Yeah.
Sometimes it happens in these scenarios that we be able to, because in essence, if it doesn't work out, they're going to stay where they're at, and they're going to want a building that works, right?
Right.
And so at a certain point, I think when the attorneys are drafting this, or the city is drafting this, we should have a certain point where, hey, you've been in this, you're still in this building, and we need to upgrade the building so you can stay in this building. And so we need the funds to go back to the building. And, with legally put a time limit, 3 years, whatever that goes in there. But at a certain point, it's got to be obvious that we actually need that money to still service the adult center.
For sure. Okay, so mayor's business, just a couple of dates for everyone there in TV land and our guests here still in the council chambers. The Canby Spooktacular Village is on October 31st from 3 to 6 p.m. There will be trick-or-treating downtown, so I'm counting on Councilor Sassy to be in his best Halloween costume, handing out candy downtown. Councilor Patton, you got yours picked out?
I will be celebrating Halloween in Denver.
Okay, well, we will miss you. November 5th.
Where Parker?
November 5th is Election Day. Please get out, vote, mark your ballots, get them in, please. It's super important. Canby's 99E grand reopening will be first Thursday, so November 7th, from 4 to 5. We're going to do cake, ice cream, balloons. Jerry's going to give a speech on the importance of 99E and the repaving project. That will be followed up by first Thursday, so mark your calendars, come down.
They close down the 99 for that event?
I don't think we're going to be closing down 99.
That's probably not prudent.
I do not believe that we will be closing down 99E, but we will be around.
To come in.
We'll be hanging around the arch that no one apparently likes and doesn't feed people. So, yes, Councilor Patton.
First of all, I have no problem with the arch, but that's besides the point. Are we releasing balloons? Because I just read an article about how that's not a good idea.
We're not releasing balloons.
Okay, great.
Doves of Peace is what we will be releasing.
And we will be feeding people cake.
Yeah, there will be cake. I believe it's going to be, we'll have a road emblem so everybody can take a piece of ODOT with them. But
Not from the new road.
No. December 6th, mark your calendar. That's the first Friday in December. Will be the Light Up the Night at Waite Park. So mark your calendars for that. I know Jerry and his team are very excited about starting to put up lights in Waite Park and down First Avenue, starting next week. Let's see, other fun stuff. Nothing to report on Clackamas County Coordinating Committee or the Area Commission on Transportation. A couple of us came back from the League of Oregon Cities Conference, and one of the big topics that we spent about an hour and a half on was the Supreme Court ruling on the camping ordinance, and what is that going to mean? And I know Council President Hensley has been wanting to possibly open that back up for discussion. But from our conversation at LOC, I think maybe we need to wait until after this session with the legislature, because they are going to have to make changes before we can make changes.
Yes, I did initially propose a November work session regarding this, as Eileen would probably remember, but I'm going to revise my proposal to talk about it sometime in this late winter, early spring, depending on when the House bill is readdressed, because the league is lobbying to have some changes made to House Bill 3115 in regards to its language and its ambiguity. I can't say that word. It's very ambiguous language. There we go. I cannot word today. But anyway, the definition is pretty ambiguous in what is considered objectively reasonable. They need to define that, and then we can therefore take that language and be more certain about our ordinance. So I'm willing to postpone our discussion on that until the legislature moves or doesn't.
Well, I appreciate that and was banking on it, so thank you.
You're welcome.
I will report more back on just some of the workshops and whatnot that we think there's some key pieces and takeaways to bring back for the council on that. And then I think some pieces with coming up in our next year's goal setting session as well. Councilor Stearns, just confirmation, I have in my calendar that November 16th is the Bridging Cultures Thanksgiving Day or Thanksgiving dinner. Can you look into that to confirm that that is indeed the case?
I will check to make sure that is the case.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah, I didn't know if it was the 16th or 23rd, so I had it on both. So yeah, I'd like to know too.
We are going, just learned today from Mr. Nelzine that we are going out to bid on the Northeast 10th Street Sidewalk Project. So that will be going out here shortly so that we will hopefully be able to, see some activity here next, probably late spring into the summer for sidewalks on Northeast 10th. So when those bids come back, we'll see that to approve that and move that forward. And finally, on my piece for tonight is my annual leaf speech. So we have a number of new neighborhoods that may not know that we don't rake or blow or sweep our leaves into the street for the city street sweepers to come by and pick up their weekly rounds around the city. It is an increased expense. It's very expensive to begin with already, but then to add everyone else's leaf debris in the street just adds to it and adds more time, more fuel, and greater cost to the city. So please don't do that. So to help with that, we will be having there is a leaf drop-off at Public Works. It is Monday through Friday from 6 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. It is by appointment only, so that they can just keep track of who truly lives in the city and who doesn't. But if you call 503-266-0798, talk with Miss Rhonda, she will get you set up or at least checked off so that you can bring your leaves down to Public Works for them to handle. There are no charges for this service. We just appreciate that you just call ahead so everyone knows. And that concludes my report for this meeting. Councilor comments and liaison reports. Mr. Davis, we'll start with you.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll be brief. I'll try to be brief anyway. Let's see, the Park and Rec Committee, I just, again, want to thank our Park and Rec Committee for all the outstanding work that they are doing in regards to the projects, moving the projects forward. At our last Park and Rec meeting, James Hackthorne of the Canby Rebels was there again to thank us for the use of the Maple Street Park and the turf fields. He did talk about that there were 200 area girls that participated in the last tournament and over 1,000 players that participated in the last tournament. He also handed out a book of coupons for downtown that they developed, which is increasing business for our downtown. So I just wanted to thank the Rebels for their work on increasing business downtown, and he was very appreciative for the work at Maple Street on the field. The other part that's interesting is we are getting a lot more input at our meetings from citizens attending the Park and Rec Committee. And people that are living around Maple Street Park are very pleased with the work that Gary and his staff are doing at Maple Street Park, cutting down limbs when people complain about the limbs and things like that. So nice work on Gary's part and their staff of getting Maple Street up to snuff. They had some questions about the lighting up above the field and how far out that would go. And so Gary and staff are going to work with them, and once we turn on the lights, see if there's any issues, we can ask the contractor to adjust those lights. We did talk under my liaison report with the Park and Rec. We talked about what we talked about at the last city council meeting, and that was the parking issue along Maple Street. And so Jerry was going to look at that in regards to that field where the trees are, come up with a plan, maybe a cost that we can look at next year's budget to see what that cost would be for actually asphalting that area so we can get some of those cars off the street. Jerry's also looking at where they can cut back on the driveways because there's no real homes right there where the driveways are. Where then cars pulling out of there have visibility for cars coming down Maple Street. So I appreciate Jerry looking at that. And then as far as the pedal park goes, the direction from council was to look at that in the next year's CIP for the projects. And how that looks. And so Jerry and the Park and Rec Committee will come up with recommendations to present back to the City Council in regards to how does that look when we include the pedal park into that. So we talked about again, I would encourage you to all participate in the trick or treat downtown. You're more than welcome to join police and fire across from Wynn's. If you want to help hand out candy, there's a lot of kids that come by there, and we could certainly use more help, especially if the firefighters and police officers have to take off. So, and I look forward to the ribbon cutting on November the 7th. End of report.
Great. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Councilor Sassy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So we had a library meeting last week, and as you know, they came and presented the strategic plan. Stephen Hager is now a notary public for the library. It's free, but donations are accepted. Updated request for the reconsideration form. And they just finished their library annual state report. It has been submitted, so that's done. The library was closed on 10/14 for staff development day, carpet cleaning, and the new teen mural was installed, which is awesome looking, the whole wall. And one man tried to go in and said, "You're not open today?" Walked over the steam cleaners and the carpets but welcome to Canby. They also have finally got a teen liaison, which hopefully will be on board soon, and they are very happy with her. She's a freshman, so hopefully they get her for 4 years. And that's all I have in the library. But I would like to know, where are we at with the Crawford property?
Yeah.
That's
The burnt house.
the house that you and I talked about.
Thank you. I need to look into that. So we have notified both owners of the property in their various ways. We did inform Steve Gutierrez, the gentleman who was here to complain about the concern, but the deadline for letting us know is either coming up or was just passed, so I need to get on that. Yeah.
Perfect, that's all I have, thank you.
Great. Thank you, sir. Counselor Stearns.
I attended the bike and pedestrian meeting, and there was some talk about maybe speed limits on the biking trail or banning of e-bikes. The committee was more in favor of a speed limit rather than the ban on the e-bikes, because some of them, people use the e-bikes for mobility purposes. So that I just wanted to report that. I was thinking also on the leash enforcement, which I brought up, I think, a couple weeks ago as well. What if we just had like a phone number on there to call for violations, and then the code enforcement people wouldn't have to worry about not having anything to do during the day, or something to that effect, because I think it could be a problem. And the idea with dogs off the leash, most of them are nice and there's no problem with it, but if there's the one that's not nice, it can cause trouble. So that's the only thing I have to say.
Okay. Council President Hensley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You already alluded to our attendance of the League of Oregon Cities Conference. I personally found the counselors' workshop more beneficial than ones I've had in recent history. They divided it into separate segments, and they were all things that were very pertinent and beneficial to what we're talking about right now. Council policies, which Councilor Davis and Councilor Patton and I have been working on updating that, which, sidebar, that was my next moment. We did have a meeting yesterday and finalized our changes and updates, proposals, and Maya is now working to get that all baked together, and then it'll go over to legal. And so we should be seeing it here for the full meeting pretty soon for approval. We also talked about charter review and court cases and legislative priorities, and a lot of good stuff came out of League of Oregon Cities Conference, like you were talking about, that we'll probably have to like spoon feed throughout these next few meetings, because there was so much. It was a really good conference, actually. Talked about the policy review. I unfortunately had to miss the school board meeting because I had a conflict, so I will report on that once I watch it back. But I did want to report that this coming Friday is the last home football game for the year, guys. They're playing Silverton, and I have a special spot in my heart for this one because it's senior night. So as much as I love Canby and all things political with our community, family does come first. So even though I've had many other offers to take my time for Friday night, I will be at that game for senior night, as we have a senior in my house. So I will be attending that event, and I hope you'll all join and support the Cougars. Go Cougs. That's all I got.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Maldonado, any comments?
Nothing to report.
No? Okay. Councilor Patton.
Well, you did mention dogs, so strap in, folks, because I got a lot to talk about. Anyways, we'll start off with this Friday at 10:30 at Community Park. There's been a ton of work done on the native plant sanctuary down there, and so they're going to be doing a rededication or re-grand opening of the native plant sanctuary. So that's this Friday at 10:30 at Community Park.
I thought that was
And what?
It's Friday. I thought it was Saturday.
No, I'm pretty sure the email said Friday.
Friday, what time is it again?
I thought the email, I double checked because I thought that looked weird. I thought it said it was.
Yeah, Mayor,
Yes, sir.
What you're thinking about on Saturday is the tree planting along Highway 99 with Kathy Smith.
Thank you.
Yeah, so, so that's that, and, no, I'm not gonna go on about dogs, so I'm done.
That was it.
Did the switcheroo.
We gotta talk about dogs, come on.
And he didn't have 4-inch paper.
And you said Friday at 10 o'clock, sir.
10:30.
10:30.
Great. And that's all that you had?
That's it.
Perfect.
That is all I have.
Look at the clock.
Next on the agenda is city administrator business and staff reports. Ms. Stein.
So I will take Counselor Patton's time. No. Actually, you keep mentioning things, so I'm crossing them off my list here. So just continuing on, business licenses, I sent the council some information recently about how to find them on the website, but they are there. They are listed on a monthly basis, so if you have any questions, you want to know who has a business license, or you see somebody in business who doesn't have one and you want to report them or let us know, the information is there on the website for you to find. Okay. I recently gave, very recently, like 10 minutes before the meeting tonight, I sent the council a report on the questions that were asked last time on the city's hybrid work policy. So there were questions asked, those were answered, there's a spreadsheet. I realized afterwards that I did not give you a copy of the city's AFSCME contract. You may have it already, I don't know, and the city's remote work policy. But in short, the city's contract with AFSCME calls for the creation of a remote work policy. So I will get that, I will have Kevin get that to you tomorrow. But I just wanted you to know that's in your email tonight. And then I did, let's see, how do I, so in my discussion, so the decision that you made on the Canby Adult Center, I spoke with Superintendent Patterson about the ground agreement, and just kind of, we were talking about all different things, and including the sports center. That led me on a journey, and I did not realize that there had been some scoping work and a master plan created for a sports center several years ago. So that was good to find that work. It was scoped out at Ackerman, and so it just caused me to think about maybe Ackerman in some reconfigured way might be the place that we could accommodate a sports center. I sent those plans to COGEO. I haven't heard anything back yet, and I'm going to reach out again and make sure that Patrick from COGEO received the diagrams. But Jennifer, the new superintendent, is very open to do anything on that site. As the council has, is aware, there's a kind of a blip in the population projections that caused them to want to hang on to Ackerman to get through that bubble. But after that, my sense was that the school district was very open, or at least this superintendent was very open to any kind of possibility that would remodel Ackerman. Part of the reason, or the Ackerman site, part of the reason that we were exploring the possibilities, and I was talking with Jennifer, was because of the agreement, but it had been suggested that could we do a building for land swap, and we give the school district the adult center, and in exchange, the school district gives us the land that the swim center sits under. But there would have to be a parcelization of the property because the entire complex sits on two large tax lots, so it's not really positioned well to identify what would be the like value of the land versus the building. So those are just various ideas that I'm exploring in response to this discussion that occurred about the adult center. And the adult center, the sports complex, and, different possibilities that site could be used for. So just wanted you to all know that I was having all these discussions and kind of weaving and putting together various ideas, so. And then I too wanted to just acknowledge that today this is David's last meeting, and I wanted to thank David for his work as well. He's been a pleasure to work with, and I think because of his service and his efficient service, it made it easier to consider making the city attorney contracted and to use Barry Elsner and Hammond. So I think he's just been a very good example. And I have worked with many city attorneys in my career, and it's been a pleasure to work with David. So thank you, David. That's all.
Likewise, Eileen, thank you.
Okay. Eileen, did you want the council goal update for Q2?
Oh, yes. I'm sorry, I just jumped to the other things. So there were, in your packet is the second quarter goals for the year. I just wanted to highlight on some of them. So the systems, adjusting the city systems development charges. So the status on that is the consultants are under contract as of October, and we'll be starting the SDC update work soon, as in December and early into next year. So that is coming. The hotel and motel recruitment. The Economic Development Director did give the council an update at its October 2nd meeting, so that was a recent report. The Street Maintenance Task Force continues to meet. They had a second meeting on October 1st. The next meeting is November 13th, and they are getting close to a recommendation. So hopefully after the new year turns, we can get their recommendation in front of the council. And then I also wanted to point out that I did just talk about the status report on the Sports Center complex. So unless there's any other questions, those are the things I wanted to highlight. So,
Great. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
All right, next on the agenda is second opportunity for citizen input. There is no citizen input at this time. Action review.
There's no ice cream either, I bet.
You adopted ordinance 1632, approved ordinance 1633 to a second reading on November 6, 2024, as well as approving the library strategic plan, and approved the city administrator to come back with a contract with Barry, Elsner, and Hammond for legal services at a future council meeting.
as well as reconfirming the commitment of $500,000 in ARPA funding to Canby Adult Center, and to instruct the city administrator to work with the city attorney to bring back guidelines for formal approval.
Excellent. Thank you.
I'm the only one having trouble with words tonight.
I know.
That concludes our meeting. I will take a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, we are adjourned. Canby, good night.
Bye, David. Thank you.
Thank you, David.
Thank you, David.
Take care.